Lord of Mysteries, Survival from the Secret Doll Chapter 81 to 100. After stuffing the written note into an unexpected place in the table tennis area, Tang watched the task progress bar fill up and then completed it. Task information updated. Side quest. Establish a secret organization, Phase 2. Please establish a comprehensive set of rules and regulations for the secret organization. Task reward. Surprise gift pack *1 foot. Task status, completed. Reward issued. This side quest has entered Phase 3. Side quest. Establish a secret organization, Phase 3. Having well-established rules and regulations is a quality that a secret organization should possess. After all, an organization that is not open, not transparent, and has no opportunities for advancement, oh, no offense, but who would want to join such a damn organization? Of course, I'm not talking about you, but you should also know that the development of a secret organization takes a very, very long time. So, after establishing a comprehensive set of rules and regulations, you are faced with a new challenge. Miskatonic University, an organization with a pivotal position in the Cthulhu Mythos system, choosing it as the synonym for a secret organization also proves that you have extraordinary ambition. A library with unparalleled collections, talented individuals in various fields, unique knowledge of the occult, seeking the unknown. Exploring the unknown. Unveiling the unknown. Every Miskatonic University student should uphold this philosophy. But right now, it seems you don't have any proper students. Please recruit outstanding students with the above characteristics. And conduct preliminary occult training. Quietly, such people are not uncommon, there are daredevils everywhere. Task progress. 0/100. Task reward. Surprise gift pack *1, Black Magic Book, Necronomicon, copy. That which is eternally present will not die, and in the strange eons even death may die. PFF'd. Tang spat out the water he had just drunk. He coughed several times, almost choking to death. What the hell? What the hell is that? Tang pulled up the system panel, staring intently at the task reward line, his voice becoming somewhat shrill. System. He was in a pretty good mood just now, and he got another surprise gift pack. Although he didn't know what it was, there was a high probability that there would be good things inside. After all, the system had just confidently said that it would give him a surprise. Surprise? What surprise? More like a fright. Knowledge wilderness is not even pretending anymore, it wants to fill his head with crazy knowledge first, right? Host, the main system really has a lot of good stuff, the system said triumphantly. This reward is absolutely awesome. Although it didn't get any remains of ancient gods or anything, this was something it had been pestering the main system for a long time, frantically probing the main system on the verge of revocation, and only then did it get this good thing for the host. Even if it's just a copy, it has everything it should have. Host, you know what I mean, right? Host, hurry up and praise it, praise it, praise it. Awesome. Understand you. Yes, 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 the things brought from the knowledge wilderness are, in essence, close to the source material. But this book title, even if it looks like something from the old era, maybe it contains crazy knowledge describing some ancient beings or pillars. This thing was okay in an era where the extraordinary was not obvious, but now, the people who see it will say it's good, and then go crazy, shouting something like, the old ones have returned, the stars are right, while dancing like shamans. System, are you okay? Are you really okay? If this thing is brought out, the next second he gets it, maybe it will be a god knocking on his door with a Chavez meter. After all, unlike the books from the era when the extraordinary was not obvious, the things brought from the knowledge wilderness are likely, very likely, to be real things. I'm fine. Oh, right, the main system still has a lot of similar things, I'll swipe some more next time. Tang collapsed in his chair, then looked at the system panel in front of him with a serene expression. Thinking that this thing was fought for by the system. It's okay, I'll be fine after a sleep. System, you're really the best. Tang gave it a thumbs up. Having such a dedicated system, the future is truly promising. Maybe there will also be a Book of Nameless Sacrifices, which contains some records of summoning fallen something or other. It's okay, one debt is no pressure, I'll burn them all if there are a few more. What, put it in the library? Cultivate a few old ones, cultists who shout about soaring 90,000 miles every day. Serenely die JPG. System. The second surprise gift pack contained, in addition to general knowledge fragments, forging times, appraisal times, and bionic mimic usage times, also gave him a stargazer equipment. Star chart for observing stars. Quality, system exclusive. The star chart is an astronomical instrument that specifically displays celestial bodies to the public, allowing people to observe the stars without having to look up directly at the sky. As everyone knows, the best time to observe stars is always at night, and during the day, using a star chart to observe the movement of stars is your best choice. By depicting the observed movement of stars at night and replicating it on the star chart, you can occasionally observe traces of the stars in this way. System reminder, depicting the corresponding stars requires the use of the telescope for observing stars. Tang held the star chart for observing stars, which was actually just a blank disk, and sat on a high ground, looking at the stars above his head. This item is a bit interesting. Unlike the mosaic glasses and the telescope, this item has an offensive extraordinary power in addition to its auxiliary function. Stars that have already extinguished also want to leave their traces in the star chart. This is their last trace. You can summon an extinguished star by injecting a certain amount of spirituality. Note, this extraordinary ability can only be used once in a short period of time. If used too much, the star chart will have to leave the fate trajectory of extinguished stars, and extinguished stars, where does fate come from? In other words, I can summon a meteorite to silence people. This is much more reasonable than the unreasonable plots written by third-rate novelists. And are the extinguished stars really extinguished stars? Could there be some strange things left on them, seeping into the earth through the seals of the seven gods? Bringing back his divergent thoughts, Tang took out the telescope. The stars on the star chart for observing stars do not refer to the stars in the celestial realm above, but to glimpse fate through the stars. A very powerful tool for peeking into the trajectory of fate. Tang pondered for a moment. All the items in the Stargazer set should be applicable to Euclidean space. Could this item be related to time? Just like how he used the yesterday once more charm to borrow the power of the future, and fate, in the occult, can be understood as the future spirituality warning the past spirituality. Picking up the telescope and putting on the mosaic glasses, Tang held the astrolabe in one hand and the telescope in the other. After pondering for a moment, he entered the Euclidean space with the system. Tang planned to observe the old man not far away first. Due to the limitations of his own spirituality, if he wanted to see the scenes of Backland through the telescope and inscribe his father's fate, he would have to go to Backland himself. So, Tang decided to do an experiment with people nearby first. Furthermore, observing the sequence one-time worm, coupled with inscribing the other party's fate on the astrolabe, the dual interference of the theater and the system was not foolproof. The essence of Euclidean space is an advanced version of the telescope. Observing here and then inscribing stars into the astrolabe is equally effective, and this space should also possess the authority of secrecy. This could be seen from the fact that observing Amon and Pales did not attract their attention. After all, it's a sequence one-time worm. If it discovers traces of fate being disturbed when I inscribe it into the astrolabe in the real world, I might be exposed. Well, this is his caution, not cowardice. Through the power of Euclidean space, Tang saw a house in the nearby town. The night was the best disguise. Under the crimson moon, the town was very quiet. Most of the people, lacking much entertainment, had gone to bed early to prepare for the next day's labor. In the dead of night, it was a good time to do bad things. And the baby-faced knight parasitized by a time worm was also like this. Tang looked at the middle-aged man beside him, his fingers twitching, wanting to inscribe him into the astrolabe. As Tang's spirituality poured into the astrolabe, other things seemed to be gathering towards him. Unlike tangible things, this was more like a concept, information carried by the space itself. Tang could vaguely sense something, and he asked the system to slightly loosen the restrictions on divinity. He then took out the mosaic glasses again to accommodate his spirit body, before looking around again. Divinity, in Euclidean space, acts as a filter, ensuring that Tang would not be directly overwhelmed by the constant, endless amount of information, leading to mental breakdown, loss of control, and death. And this restriction of divinity made it difficult for Tang's own level to receive a large amount of information at once, while also blocking his vision. When constantly exploring the rules of Euclidean space itself, this restriction naturally had both advantages and disadvantages. After removing the restrictions on divinity, with his own high level, Tang saw for the first time the power of the essence of Euclidean space being leveraged by the astrolabe. It was countless radiance. Like dazzling colored glass reflecting in the sunlight, countless shimmering fragments were converging towards the astrolabe in Tang's hand. Looking more closely, one could see that countless symbols were contained within those countless shimmering fragments. They were symbols of the past, symbols of the present, and symbols of the future. Difficult to interpret, yet incomparably magnificent, they were traces of fate, making people unable to help but observe and think about what their meanings were. And this kind of thinking, this kind of observation, represented observation. Observing the complete life of a sequence 1. Then Tang's eyes blurred instantly, and countless brilliant fragments were instantly covered with layers of thick mosaics. And the astrolabe in Tang's hand was frantically absorbing his spirituality. He subconsciously let go, but the astrolabe did not fall, but floated in front of him, as it had stopped inscribing because he had stopped inputting spirituality. This action also stopped the countless mosaics that were constantly emerging from surging into the astrolabe. The mosaics gradually dissipated, as if reintegrating into the space itself. Tang took a deep breath, and then the system once again allowed divinity to cover the host spirit body, shielding the countless pieces of information around. He looked at the astrolabe in front of him. A thin disk floated within unformed dust. It was an unfinished star, a star, made by subtly leveraging a little bit of the power of Euclidean space with Tang's spirituality, but it was only an empty shell, with a hollow interior. The inscription failed, and the star was like a dying celestial body, slowly dissipating, the tiny spots of light emanating from it gradually merging into the surrounding space. As time passed, the unfinished star also dissipated in the Euclidean space. Looks like it won't work. In the field of divination, divination involving oneself is the easiest and most difficult to be interfered with. High-sequence beyonders, especially those involving the level of fate, protecting their own fate is an instinct. Unless they can get the help of secrecy, it is difficult for others to observe their own fate. However, all of this is quite easy to achieve in Euclidean space, because this is a dimension higher than the spirit world. Fate is in the spirit world. The reason why high-sequence beyonders are difficult to be divined and predicted is only because their fate is difficult to find. Some beyonders will even deliberately hide this information. But for the observer, existence means that it can be observed. It's just that for him, inscribing the fate of a sequence 1 time worm is very difficult. Like a suction pump, he doesn't have that much spirituality for the astrolabe to draw away. It's that my own level is not enough. And also, if I forcibly depict it, will I be noticed by the other party? If it is a lower level, and also familiar with me, and will not resist too much, perhaps it will be much simpler. A false god is just pulling a tiger's skin, strong on the outside but weak on the inside. Whether it is its own spirituality or the system's divinity, although it can barely fool the rules, it simply cannot reach the level of sequence 4 in the actual operation. In this way, many things cannot be done, or rather, they are quite troublesome to do. Those radiances should be similar to the gray fog, a part of the space itself. Tang thought. However, the future me said that I can only leverage the power of this space after being promoted to sequence 4. I don't think so. Obviously, I just leveraged a little bit with the astrolabe, didn't I? System. Watching the host who was about to transform into an idea king again, the system wanted to interrupt hesitantly, but there was really no good reason. I can't say it's scared, can I? For example, leveraging the power of this space, and then letting it stuff it into the system space or something. Fortunately, because of the lack of time caused by spirituality, and the degree of exploration of Euclidean space itself was not deep enough, the host thought of a few small tricks, and then had to leave here because his own spirituality was exhausted. Amitabha Amitabha. The system's electronic voice carried a trace of relief and joy. Today, it felt again that its own host's low sequence was not a bad thing. While waiting for his spirituality to recover, Tang sorted out the list of people he currently needed to record. Moreover, recording unfamiliar people with high positions carries a high risk. He thought for a moment, first is myself, to see what kind of fate I can see, then my mother, father, and Owen. The fates of his family members were naturally the most important. And the information given by this system-exclusive item was always vague, only symbolically describing the extraordinary abilities in the introduction. He needed to operate it specifically to understand. There was a limit to the number of stars that could be recorded with this thing. It could be seen from the extraordinary ability to actively summon meteorites that using it multiple times in a short period would take up a star slot. Then there's the theater core, Olsen. There are so many, and the priorities must be sorted. I also don't know how many stars this astrolabe can record at most. After it's full, I don't know if this limit will increase as his own sequence increases, Tang sighed. The system also had a cute and brainless attitude towards this. It didn't have much information to use as a reference on items given by the main system, which was the knowledge wilderness. After the spiritual consumption within the Euclidean space was fully recovered, Tang took out the mosaic glasses, put them on, and began to observe himself through the telescope. This perspective is indeed a bit strange. When observing himself from a third-person perspective, he could see the system hidden within his body, and also see several spiritual lines twisting and extending outwards. Those were the spiritual lines extending to the secret puppets far away through the bionic puppet module. After calmly observing for a moment and finding nothing unusual compared to before, Tang's spirituality flowed into the astrolabe. Following the flow of a strange power, a star slowly appeared and condensed on it. It was a celestial body that floated quietly, about the size of a billiard ball. Its surface was illusory and hazy, with a crystal-like transparent luster, emitting a faint white light. This celestial body didn't seem to exist in the real world. Tang tried to touch it, and unsurprisingly, his palm passed through the crystal star without touching anything. It was more like it was in a high-dimensional space, and this star was just a projection of the high-dimensional space. Was it because his star was special, or were all the stars like this? Calming down, Tang continued to study. As a diviner, he had also learned extraordinary knowledge related to the field of astrology. Although it was not as good as the Sequence 7 astrologer of the apprentice pathway, in the field of divination, the essence of all divination and prophecies was the revelation of information from the spirit world to the real world, but there were many ways to interpret it. Tang's spiritual intuition told him that he could get more spiritual revelations about the future from this crystal star. He took out a gold coin and performed a simple divination. With a ding sound, the gold coin flew up and then fell. Tang glanced at it, his expression becoming a little strange. The divination he performed was, in the near future, I will be in danger. And the revelation obtained from the divination was, yes. Putting the astrolabe into the system space, Tang performed the divination again. But this time, the revelation of the divination was, no. As a diviner, daily divination for himself had always been a common occurrence, and Tang's spiritual intuition was unprecedentedly strengthened near the astrolabe, allowing him to perform this divination. Similar to the power of the gray mist, as long as it is within a certain range of the astrolabe, it can eliminate interference and create the most favorable environment for divining the fate of the person represented by the star. Tang took out the telescope again. Observing the stars was originally one of the functions of the telescope. This time, he aimed it at the star on the astrolabe that belonged to him. In the next second, the scene Tang saw was not the symbols inside the star that symbolized the past, present, and future, but a man of medium build, gloomy face, pale complexion like paper, but very upright, with faint black mist swirling around him, and a huge mosaic behind him. That was cosmic dark side. Why did the figure of a cosmic dark side descent appear in the star that symbolized his future? Did his danger come from this ancient god? In the next moment, the field of vision of the telescope suddenly rose, revealing the scene around the god's descent. It was a wasteland. On the wasteland, flocks of vultures were lying on the ground, gnawing on something. There were remnants of swords, guns, sticks, and clubs everywhere, indicating that a not small conflict had occurred not long ago. The bloody smell seemed to be transmitted through the telescope, and rotten corpses and chopped-up trunks were everywhere with dark red and black pieces of meat. A very fierce conflict, Tang guessed. In this picture, the cosmic dark side descent was standing in the center surrounded by corpses. He raised his head and stretched out his hands, seemingly embracing the things above his head, while chanting something, praying to something. Tang narrowed his eyes. These are Loen, Intis, and Phaenopotter military armor? He identified the weapons and armor remaining on those bodies, and his heart was constantly recalling knowledge about this. The countries created by Augustus, Sauron, and Einhorn had different beliefs. These countries had been hostile to each other since the Fourth Epoch. In addition, there were wars with religious significance such as the Oathbreaker War and the White Rose War. In the early days of the founding of the country, conflicts on the border due to religious beliefs, land, and resources were inevitable. The cosmic dark side wanted to collect a large number of sacrificial materials. Besides densely populated places, where could a large number of sacrificial materials be collected? That was naturally the national border. Years of war, changes in the political situation, national conflicts, and opposition of beliefs. Even if some people died, it was nothing unusual. But he remembered that Owen's letter full of abstract concepts seemed to mention that he was in the Okinawa Highlands now. The starting point of the Hornassus Mountains was a huge, dry plain. Here, it bordered the Phaenopotter Kingdom, the Intis Kingdom, and the Loen Kingdom, and was also a buffer zone between the countries secretly recognized by the three countries. However, in recent years, as friction between the three countries continued, minor frictions also occurred in the border area. Even if large-scale wars did not occur, this kind of open and secret struggle was not uncommon. There were also often refugees from various countries who smuggled into other countries to make a living. Therefore, this foot of the Hornassus Mountains, called the Okinawa Highlands, gradually developed due to the constant flow of people, food, grass, and weapons. In the highlands, Saga Castle, jointly built by the Loen army and exiled slaves, became a military fortress of the Loen kingdom on the front line. Walking out of the spirit world, Tang, who had changed his appearance, and the disguised traveler's secret puppet took advantage of the night to enter it. The soldiers stationed at the Rune border spent most of their time sleeping in taverns and in the beds of women, apart from their daily training and patrols. To be honest, the kingdom of Rune was not harsh on the soldiers stationed at the border. Many children from ordinary families, as long as they met the conditions, would be sent to the army by their families. This was not only because the country paid for the upbringing of these soldiers sent to the army, but also because, after going to the battlefield, even if they died in battle, the country would still give the family of the fallen soldier a sum of compensation. Even if the compensation was not considered generous, perhaps only enough for a family of 3 for a week, it could still allow many families to breathe a sigh of relief, without having to constantly tense the strain in their minds. But they could not even support themselves, yet they had to persevere in giving birth to children. Helpless, pitiful, but also realistic. If one performed meritorious service on the battlefield and obtained military honors, becoming an honorary knight and receiving a title, this was also one of the few ways for these ordinary, low-level soldiers to cross classes, with one person attaining enlightenment and all their animals ascending to heaven. As long as one person received a knighthood, the entire family would be able to cross a certain class and no longer live like corpses, at least having some semblance of humanity. But such people were few and far between. There were many people in the army who wanted to work hard to climb up, but ordinary people were just ordinary people. Without background, opportunity, or excessive ability, in an army with a strict internal class system, power flowed to power, wealth flowed to wealth, and the Rune nobles naturally enjoyed various privileges that ordinary people could hardly reach. Without outstanding talent, they still firmly controlled this channel, limiting the possibility of most people working hard to make progress. Those who remained were mediocre, and perhaps one day they would leave the army because they could no longer lift a sword or spear, but more people could not survive until that day, and would die in some conflict or assassination, their bodies being placed in the border church, never to return to their hometown. As the frontline fortress of Rune located in the Orkney Highlands, Saga Castle had the most taverns, hotels, and shops selling food and cloth, in addition to military buildings. The soldiers would give part of their savings to their families far away in their hometowns through the state, and the rest would be spent in these places. After all, no one knew which would come first, the future or tomorrow. Saga Castle, a relatively remote tavern. Taverns were one of the favorite places for many rune soldiers, bards, passing merchants, and nightclub girls. Cheap wine numbed people's nerves, and through short-term pleasure, they could also temporarily forget the unhappy things of daily life. Excessive pressure, yet unable to be relieved, easily led to the complete eruption of the lower classes at a certain moment. Small-scale brawls were not uncommon in Saga Castle, and as long as there were no overly serious consequences, the military's higher-ups would not care. This remote tavern was also one of the many inexpensive taverns in Saga Castle that catered to the lower-level soldiers. Here, the smell of feet, the smell of sweat, along with the smell of wine and some unidentifiable odors, formed a unique smell in the small, unventilated tavern. Amidst the clinking of glasses, there were men wearing long swords and armor laughing and joking with each other, and there were bards and merchants drinking and making merry together. Some girls shuttled from time to time in front of each wine table, handing out the unique wine of this area with a smile, and occasionally they would be invited by drunken men to spend the night on the second floor of the tavern. Among them, a man with knotted muscles, short black hair, brown eyes, bronze skin, tall stature, and carrying a broadsword on his back was particularly prominent. "Hey, Ramde, if you keep refusing like this, you will really hurt that lady's heart." A companion next to him picked up a pot of wine, laughing and drinking the wine in the pot in large gulps. "Be careful that the lady really runs away with someone else, and you won't even have a place to cry when the time comes," someone joked. Having ability, a passable appearance, and being appreciated by superiors, in a border area with not much entertainment, would more or less be valued by the military and some forces stationed behind Saga Castle. The appearance of such a person, although not to say that they were the focus of everyone's attention, was also a 1 in 100 talent. The Rune military forces did not lack people with an eye for talent, and other soldiers were also happy to befriend such people. After all, having one more friend was always better than having one more enemy. Moreover, there might also be a chance to catch a ride. This kind of thing had more advantages than disadvantages, and no one would want to offend them. "Look, Miss Liliana is here to find you again." Following the not-so-pure gaze in the eyes of a group of drunken soldiers, Owen looked towards the entrance of the tavern, where a woman wearing a linen dress, with beautiful long hair tied up, excessively pure and overly beautiful, was standing outside the door, looking at him shyly and timidly. In the messy tavern, she was like a butterfly falling into the ocean, making it difficult to suppress the desires in people's hearts. Such an appearance, in this kind of place, was quite dangerous. The surrounding soldiers made a commotion, signaling Owen to come forward quickly, but Owen only felt a headache. To be honest, if you get into Colonel Bernstein's eyes, the road you want to take will be much smoother. After all, the number of promotions is limited, isn't it, Ramde? Someone next to him kindly planned for him. Owen frowned, just about to say something, but felt his spiritual threads move. Owen, a master of puppets. In this kind of place, encountering a Sequence 5 powerhouse of the Seer pathway. He subconsciously became vigilant, thinking that this might be the military's test of him, or that his enemy wanted to get rid of him. Feeling his spiritual threads being grabbed, his body about to stiffen and be controlled. Damn it, he didn't bring out that demigod-level armor today. But after a while, he didn't feel like he was being turned into a marionette. Wait. This feeling, this movement of trying to tie a knot in his spiritual threads, to be honest, he wasn't unfamiliar with it. Owen's mouth twitched, and he stood up and walked outside. Ignoring the jeering and laughing sounds behind him, he walked to the outside of the tavern. His overly tall stature always gave people a sense of oppression, but the girl in front of him raised her head, her eyes sparkling with a brilliant light, seemingly wholeheartedly watching the man in front of her, without showing any timidity or fear. Too beautiful. Owen silently sighed in his heart. Then he righteously, with a straight face, communicated with the several bodyguards who had followed behind the girl. "Miss Bernstein, you should go back. Staying here so late, your father will also be worried." Owen, She's so pretty. Tang, haha, dying of laughter. If possible, my father, Colonel Bernstein, will be hosting a party tomorrow evening, and we would like to invite you to attend. Liliana Bernstein's voice was soft, as if this wait was only to inform him of this one thing. The gentleness of her voice and her attitude made it difficult for the listener to refuse her offer. Those who were secretly paying attention couldn't help but curl their lips, feeling that this big guy had stumbled upon some incredible luck. Why hadn't such a good thing happened to them? Owen shifted his gaze from the bodyguard behind the girl to the girl in front of him, and finally nodded. I will go, Miss Bernstein. In that case, my father will be looking forward to your arrival. I am too. The girl seemed very happy. She subconsciously brushed a stray hair from her forehead, as if the matter in her heart had finally settled, revealing a bright smile. She took one last look at the tall man in front of her, and then left with the somewhat helpless bodyguard behind her. Owen stood there for a long time before withdrawing his gaze. He did not return to the tavern, but instead followed the guidance of the spirit line and walked towards a place not far away. In the Sagaberg city at night, under the bright moonlight of the crimson moon, there were still many dark streets and alleys hidden in the shadows. As Owen passed through an almost lightless dark alley, he was dragged inside by a great force. He staggered from the pole, and as a power of ancient Hermes language opened the death domain incantation, the surrounding sounds instantly quieted down, as if entering a silent night, all things entering the realm of death. As for why not use the night domain, is that even possible? Would the goddess backhand send the mystery puppet master who made the incantation into the town to be neighbors with Platefish, Antigonus? Tang, holding the sun scepter, thought for a moment, then added a ray of black sunlight to the alley entrance. He used the manipulator's extraordinary characteristics within the sun scepter to give psychological cues and hypnosis to everyone passing through the dark alley, preventing them from accidentally entering this area. Sagaberg city is, after all, located in the Honesis Mountains, adjacent to the Fenaport Kingdom and the Intis Kingdom, and is a very important military fortress for Loen, garrisoned by a sequence 4 demigod of the Loen military. Even if this demigod is not here at the moment, Tang had to be cautious. After confirming that there were no problems around and that no one-eyed things suddenly popped out, Tang snapped his fingers, and a firelight flickered in the dark alley, illuminating this area. Owen stood not far away, not surprised, watching Tang conjure up a few lit candles as if by magic, letting them dispel the darkness around. Why did you come here? Some things. After using the clown's ability to plaster the candles on the wall, Tang stepped forward a few steps. He held the sun scepter, using the sun symbol at the top of the scepter as a mirror to reflect Owen's figure, in order to determine whether the other party was affected by some extraordinary power or psychological cues. Black sunlight is the core extraordinary ability of the sun scepter, but after using it too much, Tang naturally figured out some things that were not mentioned in the system identification. For example, using the characteristics of the sun scepter itself, without using spirituality to activate it, relying only on the sun scepter itself to passively use a portion of its extraordinary power. This ability will not cause the sun to float up, and there are no negative effects either. How is Mother doing? Owen asked casually, chatting like he was at home, while Tang was messing around with something. It's all right, you'll know when you go back to see her sometime. Tang casually responded, confirming that he hadn't found anything dirty, and then looked Owen up and down. Looks like you've been doing pretty well lately. Knowing to send home some random things that he doesn't even know what they are, it seems that he's doing quite well. Thinking of the scene he had just seen, combined with the things he saw in the Euclidean space, Tang used the faceless man's extraordinary ability, his voice becoming gentle and soft, even deliberately dragging out the sound a little. Wow, she's so pretty. Owen was about to say something, but was choked by Tang's words, and helplessly put down the broadsword behind him, leaning against the wall. Why are you being so sarcastic right off the bat? I'm not being sarcastic at all. After all, she does have a bit of a thing for you. Don't tell me you didn't feel anything. Owen was speechless. She's just a 14 or 15-year-old kid, what's there to feel? He still has basic moral principles, and he's not that degenerate. Hearing this, the smile on Tang's face gradually widened. Is that so? If you can think that way, then that's really great. He nodded, casually, after all, she's a witch, you're not suitable. Owen, what are you talking about? Huh. He didn't react for a moment, and when he spoke again, his voice became a little distorted, an extraordinary of the assassin pathway. A Sequence 7 witch, such a young child. Tang shrugged, believe it or not, and she's not that young anymore. He has been promoting the concept of 18 years old being adulthood at home, initially wanting to coax his mother, not to rush and hurry to drive her dear son out. By the way, after so many years of his cultural influence, Owen's values are also somewhat in line with his. In this era, the church has not yet issued anything about the most suitable age for childbearing. Labor, anchors, and believers are not that many, and the church and the country can't wait for ordinary people to have more children. However, what surprised Owen was not only this. They often saw women marrying as wives at the age of 12 or 13, but what was staggering was a 14 or 15-year-old Sequence 7, a 14 or 15-year-old witch. Most likely a witch, a small probability a pleasure succubus. Didn't you notice that your previous reaction was obviously abnormal? Tang glanced at Owen, then looked away again. Brainless guy, really, he didn't even notice that he was being instigated away from him, being tricked around in circles. Maybe he'd be sold later and still have to help the person count the money. Leaving this kid here, really, wouldn't he one day discover that this kid was poisoned to death, then locked in a coffin, and his head would be taken by that someone from later generations as a ritual material? Of course, when observing through the Euclidean space, Tang, through his spirituality, some magical items on her body, and the mirror connected to her, only saw that the other party was a witch, and had not yet carefully observed further. He is not sure whether the other party is a member of the witch sect, or a scattered witch, whether she secretly advanced without the knowledge of the military here, or is simply a member of the Loen military, responsible for attracting people with potential. But in the end, who knows what this, miss, was in her previous life. Poke a certain prince and a certain emperor. The taste of a witch is really good. If it's true love, if you like it, then that's fine. Welcome to Fanfic Audiobook, your go-to place for immersive audiobooks. If you enjoy the content, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to our channel for more amazing stories. Chapter 8. Bernstein. Alright, let's drop this for now. Tang shifted the topic, as his visit wasn't solely to see the witch. Using Euclid's space, Tang glanced around before finding Owen, but he didn't spot any traces of the Outer God's descender. He might be in Intis, stationed within the Phenebote garrison in this area, or perhaps in the wilderness. In any case, he was beyond Tang's observation range. After all, this was a demigod, a descender. If he truly wanted to conceal himself and wait for an opportunity, even with beyonders at the demigod level present, they might not be able to find him. The fluctuations in fate Tang had seen earlier originated from the Hornix Mountains, from this arid Orkney highlands. The location of his fate's fluctuations was in this area, and the timing could be determined by continuing to observe the astrological instrument. Tang himself, through repeatedly entering that space and enhancing his spiritual intuition, vaguely sensed that this might be the opportunity. The prerequisite for cooperating with Grandpa and eliminating Amon's avatar in Tingen. Do you remember that demon from before, the one who might be a descender of an outer god? A descender demon? Your guess? Wait, are you sure? He's appeared here? Owen stood up straight, his expression even more horrified than when he heard about the Sequence 7 witch. Tang nodded, then, as if by magic, he stuffed the Sun Divine staff back into the system space. I can only say it's a possibility, he said, his expression turning somewhat gloomy as he thought of something. Father has met him. I'm certain that he is the vessel for the Outer God's descender. He wanted to cooperate with Father to start a new Pale disaster in Backland, but Father refused. I suspect that the blood sacrifice sect's ritual has succeeded elsewhere, allowing the Outer God to project more power, and they plan to conduct an even more potent ritual in the Orkney Highlands, bordering 3 countries, where battles frequently occur and could potentially trigger a national war. Well, everything I'm saying is true, but confirming that the demon is a vessel for the Outer God's descender and knowing that the demon appeared here was seen through Euclid's space and the astrological instrument. Tang described the scene he had previously seen through his marionette and the words his father had spoken. finally concluding, the descender of the outer god has ill intentions. You must be careful during this period. That demon, that descender, is probably hiding in that place here, just waiting for the ritual to be completed, under the ritual conditions of massive blood sacrifice, to bring about the descent of an evil god. If that descender truly succeeded, then the Orkney Highlands would face an unprecedented disaster, and this disaster would likely affect the entire northern continent. This might be a severely corrupted body projected by the outer god, or perhaps the evil god behind him, whose power penetrates the seals of the seven gods, affecting the entire land. Either way, it was chilling. And at the border, the church's power was not that great. Here, belonging to the church, most were beyonders of the middle and low sequences. Even demigods would find it difficult to protect themselves when facing a potential disaster. I will send some messages to the Silent Church and the Stormwind Sea. I will also stay here recently and deal with the problems here. Coincidentally, his potion digestion progress was more than halfway, allowing him to control a second marionette. And the never-ending theater also urgently needed the addition of some new marionettes. Having marionettes or not, the quality of the marionettes, this made a considerable difference for Beyonders of the Seer pathway. Tang turned the ring of the master on his left pinky finger, seriously considering it in his heart. The crimson moon was serene and distant. Under the night, a carriage slowly entered a small manor. When the carriage stopped, Liliana Bernstein stepped out and entered the manor surrounded by servants. This was the residence belonging to Colonel Bernstein, but Colonel Bernstein had not returned here for a long time. A maid carefully took off Liliana's cloak and tidied her appearance. "Miss, would you like to prepare for a bath?" "Later, I'm a little tired and need to rest for a while first." Liliana's voice was very pleasant. She looked at the maid beside her gently, making the maid, who was also a woman, feel a moment of absent-mindedness. Realizing her gaffe, the maid quickly regained her senses, but her face was still flushed, secretly regretting her mistake just now. "All right, miss, I'll come back later." The maid hurriedly left the room. Liliana looked at herself in the mirror and, in the room with no one else, showed the most perfect smile to the mirror. She quietly touched her cheeks, her eyes seeming to admire. Her face was beautiful, well maintained over the years, with a youthful appearance. That look and smile were full of innocence and gentleness. In this area, at the border, with such a look and such an identity, she was well received by everyone. That smile was incomparably sweet. Liliana gently cupped her face, her eyes clear, making it difficult to notice the well-hidden, deep-seated loathing and hatred in those eyes. She chuckled softly, her voice the same as before, but with a hint of undetectable eeriness. After a while, waiting for herself to calm down, waiting for her to adjust her emotions, she stood up, her body shattering like an illusion. Her figure disappeared, entering an unknown depth underground. There, a full-length mirror cracked, rapidly disintegrating, scattering silver shards all over the ground, and a figure appeared here. As a candle was lit, the candlelight illuminated this dark space, revealing a bloody scene. This underground room, of unknown depth, had a simple operating table, and on a nearby table were several empty glass containers, as well as some unsterilized, blackish-red stained tools. There was a strong smell of blood here. The ground was covered in various dried blood that was impossible to clean, as were the walls and ceiling. Here, it was like a slaughterhouse. Liliana's sweet smile was out of place with the bloodiness here, but she seemed extremely familiar with it, quickly opening another door in the room, revealing a clean and tidy room inside. This sharp contrast made one's heart rise with a twisted pleasure, and Liliana felt the same way. She stepped into the clean and tidy room and looked at the only storage rack in the room. The rack was densely packed with various glass bottles. Under the illumination of the fire, each bottle contained a viscous liquid, keeping the organs inside in their freshest state. And Liliana, as if looking at the most perfect collection, looked at this rack of utensils, revealing a pure, malice-free smile. "You admire your work very much?" Of course. Liliana sat in the empty room, looking at the rows of glass jars on the shelves, her eyes filled with undisguised satisfaction. She seemed to be talking to herself, her voice becoming lower and softer. "They are my most prized creations. I've spent a long time collecting them. These should all be human organs.
Have you killed many people? Why did you kill them?
It started with Willibald. Liliana didn't directly answer the question from her heart. She held her face in her hands, as if lost in memories. Circles of dark light enveloped her figure, and twisted sun symbols floated above the candlelight, causing Liliana to unconsciously sink into her own emotions, deeper and deeper, as if hypnotized. He was a very tall man, not particularly handsome, but his way of speaking was interesting. He lived in Constant, but his family wasn't very wealthy. He had a wife and 2 children. Part of his monthly military pay was sent back home, but the younger of the 2 children starved to death at home after he disappeared, due to the loss of income. Before long, I think, without the main source of income, and with him labeled as a deserter with no compensation, his wife and children will also die. They should all be dead by now, buried in some cemetery, or perhaps thrown directly into the river. After all, there's no money to bury them. Have you met his wife and children? No, I haven't. The previous things he told me himself in bed, and the latter things I investigated myself after I killed him. Liliana seemed to think of something interesting and laughed. He was very capable and gained father's appreciation, and then. Her smile gradually widened, seeming to split to the roots of her ears. Then I killed him. I did it myself. It was the first time I killed someone. Let me think, it should have been a year ago. I don't remember very clearly, but the feeling was wonderful. The fresh organs still jumped and twitched for a while after leaving the body, appearing vivid and full of spirituality. He was still alive before I removed his heart, looking at me with horror in his eyes. Yes, that's right, I didn't use any anesthetic. After all, anesthetic is also a popular commodity here, and I don't think he deserved to use such a thing. She pointed to the heart at the far left of the storage rack, which was much larger than the surrounding organs and seemed a little swollen from being soaked. Look, that's it. Within the Euclidean space, Tang held the Sun Scepter, using dimension reduction to influence Liliana with the Sun Scepter manipulator's hypnotic extraordinary power, while using the Euclidean space ability similar to Gate of Heaven to browse the other party's resume. This browsing consumed a lot of spirituality, and Tang could only use hypnosis to assist while searching for the information he wanted to know. Unexpectedly, yet reasonably, this naive girl with a simple appearance was formerly a male. For extraordinary individuals of the witch pathway, after experiencing the gender change reaction caused by the pathway sequence 7 potion, if proper psychological guidance is not given, it will cause mental distortion and no longer be normal. This situation is very common in sequence 7 of the witch pathway. Moreover, with that big pervert cheek constantly influencing the lower-level assassins and being influenced by the primordial witch, an evil god of the higher sequence, even if the male-to-female extraordinary individuals of this pathway are raised freely, they still live an exceptionally difficult life. Tang found the personal experience that Liliana mentioned. Liliana's almost self-talk was incomplete. The hypnotic influence of the Sun Scepter was not that deep. After all, he was not an extraordinary individual of the audience pathway, and it was still a bit difficult to use the Sun Scepter to influence from a distance. Moreover, the other party had a deep hostility and disgust for this memory. If he easily let the other party say it, it was likely that the hypnosis would be broken the next moment. This Miss Liliana did not have a relationship with that constant person named Willibald after advancing to sequence 7 and becoming a witch. Before that, before she advanced to sequence 7 and became a woman, there were many such relationships, such people. Even Tang, who had enough experience and had experienced the era of information explosion, could not help but smack his tongue and felt a strong disgust and psychological discomfort for that Colonel Bernstein, the father who constantly appeared in Liliana's mouth. Next, let me think, there's also a merchant named Anis. She pointed to the glass bottle in the corner. He's an excellent merchant, selling armor, weapons, and spears at good prices and good quality. Marco was a blond man. He seemed a little short, but very generous. Alois, I don't want to mention him, he's always so rude. At that time, my ears felt like they were being torn off, about to detach from my body. Chattering, Liliana spoke faster and faster, looking at the shelf in front of her with intoxication, almost obsessively. Of course, father told me to take good care of them, and I did take good care of them.
Tang rarely fell silent. Damn it, he wants to kill someone now. The beginning of these things was the story of a war orphan who was adopted by Lake Bernstein, who was only a captain at the time.
If the story ended abruptly, then this would only be a children's book about a kind-hearted soldier saving a war orphan. But when the boy grew to 8 years old, and could fully see his future, promising growth, everything changed. Maintaining the connection between the two parties through certain relationships is a common means for nobles to bind their interests. Moreover, compared to using their own children, orphans who have no blood relationship and can only rely on themselves are easier to control and do not require any useless pity. If the potion is taken when the gender identity is not strong, and they advance to witch, it may not lead to loss of control, and they may even be able to better digest the demonization and master the power, but for an orphan whose body and mind have long been devastated.
Tang felt that his secret puppet should be finalized. His original intention was that if this extraordinary individual of the witch pathway had any bad intentions, then he would make the person into a secret puppet in advance.
But now, okay, the target is changed, and he can't wait for a moment.
Host, the system's voice made Tang suppress the anger in his heart. He took a deep breath, then exhaled it. Don't be angry, this kind of scum, just kill them.
This is not a civilized society. Even if it's a colonel, who can he blame for dying on the battlefield? This witch, if not controlled and guided, is not far from losing control and going insane.
Long-term mental oppression, a strong negative attitude towards oneself, coupled with the deepening influence of residual potions that were not fully digested in the early stages of advancing to Sequence 7, and the various extraordinary powers carried by the Sequence 7 potion itself, mental shocks, and abnormal self-cognition. A wild Beander who doesn't know the acting method and doesn't understand how to act correctly, is in this state and it is difficult to advance further. Sooner or later they will lose control and become a monster.
Tang looked at Liliana, who was still talking to herself, and ultimately didn't continue to ask through the Sun Scepter.
He lifted the hypnotic state, restoring everything to calm, and also suggested to Liliana that she would forget everything that had just happened.
He had learned everything he needed to know, and he also knew the clues to investigate. Next, he had to solve that scumbag, dig out his secrets, and then hang him up as a secret puppet. Putting away the Sun Scepter, Tang took a step back without stopping. The scene presented in Euclidean space began to change, completely different from the dark and cold basement before. This space has properties similar to the spirit world. Distance has no meaning. It moves, presents, and magnifies different scenes only because of the observer's will. Here, in front of him, no matter how deeply Lake Bernstein hides, as long as he is in Saga Fort and within his observable range, he will be found. Feeling that his spirituality was about to dry up, Tang frowned, but still suppressed the idea of using the yesterday reappearance charm to borrow spirituality from the future and then use the Sun Scepter to beat that scum to death with one blow, and return to the real world to restore his spirituality first.
Back at the small hotel, Tang communicated with the system.
From the information I've gathered, this witch is not a Beander from the demonist sect, but Lake Bernstein provided her with the potion separately.
Colonel Bernstein is a member of the military. Where did he get the demonist pathway potion formula? Is this situation allowed by the military, or does the military not know, and is Lake Bernstein acting on his own initiative? There are many possibilities. Currently, the information you have is not enough to judge.
The system's big data calculations can naturally count all the possibilities, but there are too few preconditions, and like divination, there is no way to accurately determine which possibility it is. However, if it's not a nail planted in the Loen military by the demonist sect, and it's not a spy cultivated by the Loen military, then the biggest possibility is that that scumbag has taken a fancy to the power of the demonist pathway itself, host.
This guess was consistent with Tang's thoughts. All three possibilities exist, but Tang is more inclined to the idea that the scumbag secretly cultivated Liliana Bernstein, hiding it from everyone. After all, Sequence 9 of the demonist pathway is called Assassin, and Sequence 8 is called Instigator. Co-opting people he favors, assassinating and instigating against people he opposes, paving the way for himself.
Beyonders of the Calamity and Disaster pathways, TISC. While waiting for his spirituality to recover, Tang told Owen the general situation through the traveler's secret puppet placed beside him.
Hearing this, Owen's teeth were gnashing. I didn't realize that Colonel Bernstein was such a thing.
He gritted his teeth a little. He could actually do this kind of thing to a child. Anyone with normal values would feel a chill upon hearing this kind of thing, followed by discomfort, anger, and the desire to grind this seemingly respectable Loen military colonel to ashes.
But the underlying values of this world are terribly distorted, with numbness dominating. This cannot be blamed on them. The bottom people struggle to survive, unable to eat their fill or keep warm, while the upper people scheme against each other. This is the case whether in Loen, Intis, Fursak, or Bayam.
Humans, in this world, are the anchors of the gods, important, yet cheap. Tang was already very satisfied that Owen had this reaction. At least it proves that their family's values are still upright and have not been corrupted.
Soft long hair fell casually on her shoulders, and the secret puppet lady, dressed in a black robe, looked a little mysterious and said lazily, "In our era, it was the same."
She came from the Tudor Empire, so she naturally knew very well about this.
Without corresponding power, humans are nothing more than sacrifices and cannon fodder in the hands of the gods.
And Beyonders, Tisk, are just more powerful cannon fodder. Without entering Sequence 4, without touching the realm of demigods and demihumans, crossing the shackles of class, wanting to live like a person, is quite difficult. The traveler's secret puppet, Angie, lightly tapped the void in front of her, and an illusory book appeared in her hand. I came, I saw, I recorded. As the illusory pages turned, stopping on one of them, Angie's figure slowly disappeared in place, as if entering someone else's blind spot, no longer seen by others. Don't worry, he will handle these problems well.
And in the next period of time, I will also assist you in making some achievements here, little boy. Leaving a meaningful sentence, she completely disappeared, entering a state of psychological stealth.
Owen, if he didn't know that this was Tang's secret puppet, he would have thought he had really encountered a Sequence 5 traveler from the Tudor Empire.
Coming here, seeing Owen dumbfounded, Tang silently installed the android puppet module on his traveler's secret puppet, maxing out the wisdom attribute.
A smile is the best interpretation. Putting aside other things, it's always good to smile more. Putting down the spiritual thread controlling the other secret puppet, Tang threw himself into the soft bed, moved out of the theater, wriggled twice, and then sat up from the bed full of sunshine scent. The purpose this time is very accurate. First, wait for the appearance of the dark side of the universe.
Second, seek opportunities for advancement. Task status has been updated.
Task: open black lens bracket, the acting of the secret puppet master, close black lens bracket. You, who have advanced to secret puppet master, have summarized certain acting rules. Please follow the acting rules and gradually improve the content of the acting, and increase the degree of potion digestion. Task completion, 53%. The potion is more than half digested. If it is conventional, one active act may not be enough. Then, it would be good to increase the level of the audience during the act.
The dark side of the universe, existence is at the level of gods. If he murders a Sequence 4 god's descendant with a god's authority, his potion digestion should also take off. It's just that this is quite dangerous. From the bottom of his heart, he doesn't want to participate in this level of battle. Using the special nature of Euclidean space to notify the Storm Church, the Artisan Church, and the Night Church without triggering the demon's dangerous intuition is already the greatest effort he can make. Chapter 89,088. That is something that can even corrode the gods.
Tang took out the star chart for observing stars from the system warehouse. Now, this item is not like before, with only a solitary crystal planet floating on it.
On the star chart, there are now 3 other stars floating. One is a semi-transparent sphere, shimmering with mysterious and complex light, slightly gray. Its interior seems to be filled with transparent worms, writhing together, overlapping into a mass. When observing it, one seems to see a series of bizarre dramas, freak shows, stilt walkers, clown performances, magicians' tricks, various deformed monsters, and all sorts of secret puppet audiences. Countless scenes overlap on the mass of worms,
forming complex symbols evolved from countless pupil-less eyes and twisted lines, layered upon layered, extremely three-dimensional. It represents the never-ending theater. There is also another star, an ominous black, the surface of the planet deathly silent and eerie, as if there are no living beings. But once you get close, you can hear something constantly mourning in a low voice. Vengeful spirits, water ghosts, it seems countless spiritual bodies are hidden within. Its interior seems to contain a small underworld, full of death, the realm of the dead. It represents Owen, the gatekeeper who recently advanced to sequence 5 of the death pathway. The last one is slightly dim, ordinary and unremarkable, slowly rotating around the central crystal planet. That is the star belonging to his mother, Mrs. Boyanka. 4 stars, representing each of them. And these stars on the star chart are not static. The other 3 stars revolve around the central crystal planet, like planets orbiting the central star. Countless semi-transparent thin lines are like gravitational pull, connecting them to the central crystal planet. Moreover, it is not limited to Tang and other people or sealed items. The stars representing Owen and Mrs. Boyanka are also connected by semi-transparent thin lines. This symbolizes that their fates have overlapping points and have deep connections and blood ties. And now, Tang watched the 2 stars belonging to himself and Owen swell up. The surface of the black star of death and the dazzling crystal planet were covered with deep black mottled marks. Faintly, these mottled shadows would spit out some black dust, like highly polluting carcinogens, quietly and slowly deepening the erosion of the interior of the stars. The star chart can predict a certain future, the fate belonging to the stars. Tang took out the telescope and mosaic glasses. If it were the beginning, and I observed that the outer god descender would pose a threat to me, I would at most report him to the church. Compared to dealing with the outer god descender myself, the extraordinary of the Orthodox Church, those archbishops, obviously have more experience. Moreover, letting the church's groups of demigods and angels take action to deal with a disloyal descender, plus the sequence 0 true god behind them who may descend at any time, is much safer and more successful than him alone. But coming here, after engraving Owen's fate into the star chart, Tang knew that his thoughts were still too simple. By observing that Death Star, he discovered that the source of this danger was not just his own future. The star representing Owen did not just show deathly silence, because he was the gatekeeper of the death pathway sequence 5. The thin line connecting the 2 of them also showed traces of turbid black pollution. As a diviner, there are many ways to interpret the revelations of fate, and the fate revelation given by the star chart is very intuitive. Many things can be interpreted through the changes in the stars themselves. Every star, since it exists, will constantly affect the trajectory of other stars. The ups and downs in other people's fates will also affect my own fate through connections. Fate is a very wonderful thing. Even angels of the fate pathway are in awe of her. What he observed, the danger from the outer gods, partly came from his coming to the Orkney Highlands to search for the outer god descender. Partly came from Owen, from his closest blood relatives. This is the danger of death. If the other party stays here, then in the revelation of fate, undisturbed, his future will be to truly become one of the many living beings heading to the underworld, the realm of death. Adjusting the telescope, Tang looked at the star chart, and the picture he saw was clearer than before. He saw the descender shouting something, the sky shrouded in haze, the Orkney Highlands filled with gloomy winds, and blood was surging on the ground. A dark crack split from south to north, like an entrance connecting to the abyss, bearing its fangs and claws, devouring the flesh and blood and vultures on the ground. It was like Pandora's box had been opened, containing the outer gods that could even corrode the gods. Tiny humans are like babbling infants in front of it, without any power to resist, until they are swallowed by the corrupted darkness. Even the dead bodies will become indescribable monsters. Under that huge crack, there were twisted eyes, greedily staring at the creatures on the earth. Hands and feet grew on the eyeballs, crawling upwards, seeming to want to climb out of the crack. They were layered upon layered, one after another. Each eyeball grew hands and feet, but under the eyeballs were nerve-like, blood-red nerve threads constantly extending downwards, seemingly wanting to pull something even more terrifying from the depths of the abyss. That is it a severed hand? The huge mosaics were layered upon layered. Even the future scene, even through a layer of mosaic glasses, made Tang break out in a cold sweat. The Orkney Highlands, this area, is really going to be chaotic. This may cause a terrible disaster that could destroy countries for Loen, Intis, and Fenbort. Tang took off the mosaic glasses, rubbed his eyebrows, and stuffed the glasses, telescope, and star chart back into the system space together. The ups and downs of fate are in the next few days. Not to mention whether the church believes me or not, just that picture, the entire Orkney Highlands will probably become the first place to suffer the impact of the pollution torrent after the abyss is opened. That level of mental pollution, if touched, let alone ordinary people, even mid-sequence extraordinary could fall into monsters in an instant and completely lose control. And the opened crack is likely to connect to the abyss, or even possibly be the astral world. Host. Tang rubbed his eyebrows, calming down the dangerous premonition that kept jumping because of his spiritual intuition. Fortunately, I am still separated by a layer of mosaic glasses and a star chart. If I really encounter the abyss in the real world, even if I get close, I may directly lose control and die. The abyss is a place independent of the real world, its entrance located in the misty sea. It is the source of all evil, a land of depravity, a dwelling for demons, the most vile, depraved, chaotic, and contaminating place. The original work didn't delve too deeply into this concept, only revealing that everything that approached it would be constantly eroded and corrupted, even deities couldn't escape. As for the demon monarch Fapti, it remains unknown to what extent the dark side of the universe can utilize this entity, or whether it can bring the abyss back into the real world. We still underestimated this ancient god who survived from the Second Epoch. Even if he has suffered some indescribable and terrifying influence, he can still use some means to feed back this influence to the whole world in a more terrifying way. A typical, if I'm not having a good time, then no one else will, mentality. I wonder if the original power corresponding to the two paths of desire has any remaining strength in that abyss. The river of eternal darkness and the knowledge wilderness both have power permeating from the west continent. There's no reason why other original powers wouldn't be active. Tang's eyes deepened. Just as the system wanted to say something, all the candles in the room were extinguished with a snap of fingers. Turn off the lights, go to sleep. Thinking about these messy things late at night, aren't you afraid of having nightmares? System. Host, you're so schizo. Tang gave the system a pillow, shut down and go hibernate. A manor in the northwest of Saga Fortress. Inside a simply decorated study, Wislik Bernstein was looking at the documents on the table. This was a middle-aged man wearing light armor, looking rigid with a serious face, but appearing emotionally restrained and meticulous. And those who approached him would feel a kind of imposing pressure, which also left him alone in the entire study. Neither servants nor guards dared to stay close to this ruined colonel. Flipping through the intelligence sent from the front line this morning, Wislik Bernstein looked up at the sun outside the French window. Today was a perfect day. While other parts of ruin were just turning cool, the Orkney Highlands had already entered the cold season. The warm sunlight would make people couldn't help but reach out to touch this hard-won warmth. In recent days, due to this and that, Colonel Bernstein, who hadn't had a good night's sleep for a long time, was a little distracted. At this time, a person was standing silently on the windowsill outside the French window, but Colonel Wislik Bernstein was completely unaware. After taking another look at the scenery outside the window, he immediately withdrew his gaze and refocused on his work. It's hard to draw bones when drawing people, and it's hard to know people's hearts when knowing their faces. After entering Euclidean space, Tang, holding the scepter of the sun in one hand while observing the internal situation from the windowsill, injected spirituality, causing the solar symbol to be filled with depraved distortion and bizarre madness of solar beams. The way I look now, I really look like a peeping Tom clinging to the window. He muttered to the air, then stretched out his hand. Sequence 6 Judge, as expected, is an extraordinary person from the Ruin military, but, after saying that, Tang began to instill spirituality, borrowing the divinity of the alchemist from the system and the high position of his own spiritual body. He began to downscale the extraordinary ability of the marionettist. He single-handedly grasped the other party's spirit thread. The marionettist possesses the most difficult extraordinary ability to restrain under the demigod.
and he wants to make this ruined colonel into his own marionette. For this reason, Tang temporarily gave up the control of the traveler marionette named Angeli on Owen's side, using the autonomy of the bionic marionette module to support the marionette from immediately dispelling the marionettization and dying. Black light burst out from the scepter of the sun, and the male servants, maids, guards, butlers, and cooks in this manner were all enveloped in the black sunlight. At this time, a large cloud of dark clouds floated over the sky, covering a corner of the sun. The bright sunlight outside the window dimmed as a result. Wistlick Bernstein suddenly raised his head. He seemed to have noticed something, and his face became extremely ugly in an instant. His body became stiff, as if fitted with puppet strings, showing a sense of lag. His spirit thread was initially controlled by someone. Marionettist. Wistlick Bernstein didn't hesitate at all. The next moment, his figure disappeared from the spot. Accompanied by a rolling sound, Wistlick Bernstein, who appeared in the garden, immediately threw out the paper figure from his pocket. The paper figure had already turned yellow and black, as if it would come alive at any moment and attack the holder. He used some kind of one-time extraordinary item to escape from the area he was just in from a long distance, trying to interrupt the marionettist from manipulating his spirit thread. But Wistlick Bernstein had no intention of paying attention to this. He found that his state had not improved in any way because he was far away from his office area. He was sure that his subconscious reaction was not wrong, but the opponent's level of difficulty was obviously beyond his expectations. When did a marionettist appear in Saga Fortress? His thoughts began to lag. At this moment, he also understood that what he was facing was not a marionettist, but more likely an extraordinary person in the Seer Pathway's demigod domain, or someone holding a sealed artifact with spirit thread manipulation abilities. The marionettist can't control me from such a long distance, but judging from the degree of mastery of the spirit thread and the degree of my marionettization, the manipulator is not in the demigod domain, but possesses a certain degree of mobility, holding a magical item composed of the extraordinary characteristics left behind by a marionettist. Where is he? Why is he attacking me? No, you can't think about so many things, you must buy time. Escape on your own, attract the attention of others to get rescued, or kill the intruder. One of the three must be chosen. His face froze, and he quickly made a choice, suddenly speaking out, his voice with an unspeakable sense of coercion. Concealment is forbidden here, escape is forbidden here. Two prohibitions swept around with a strong, convincing force. Wistlick Bernstein frantically scanned his surroundings, but didn't see even a corner of the enemy's clothes, not a trace. How is this possible? He could feel the manipulation of his spirit thread becoming more and more solid. The intruder was definitely nearby. An invisible hand tightly clenched the other party's spirit thread, but the extraordinary person didn't leave a trace, like a ghost that didn't exist in this world. Weird and terrifying, an indescribable panic made Wistlick Bernstein's face pale. He couldn't detect the enemy's location, so he planned to rush out of here and seek help from other extraordinary people belonging to the ruined military. That's right, I'm in Saga Fortress. I have never fought alone. Hey! An ambiguous sound rang in Wistlick Bernstein's ears. His pupils shrank violently, only to see a twisted sun symbol appear in front of him, and a 3-meter-long scepter slammed down. The heavy pressure in front of him forced Wistlick Bernstein to retreat, but at that moment, beams of black, corrupted sunlight poured down. The youth, holding the sun scepter, aimed the distorted sun symbol at the marionetted enemy, and black light enveloped him like a pillar. In the next moment, Wistlick Bernstein's figure disappeared again. Another paper figure, used as a substitute, was similarly scorched yellow and black, enveloped in the black sunlight. It didn't dissipate, instead, it stood up eerily in the black light, as if it had gained its own sentience. Blood-colored bubbles appeared in the paper figure's eyes, making its papier-mâché face even more blurred. The mouth, merely a casual addition by the creator, opened, revealing the pale white teeth inside. It had completely come alive. He, ha ha ha. Like a cannonball, the paper figure rushed towards Wistlick Bernstein, who was not far away, the instant the black sunlight dissipated. It crashed into the back of the colonel, who seemed a bit slow on the uptake, and instantly adhered to his skin, merging into his armor. With a tearing sound, Huselek Bernstein's armor shattered. He reached out and tore off the paper figure that had fused with his skin, along with a large piece of flesh. Blood spurted out, but it wasn't a normal color. It was filthy and unbearable, like paper pulp soaked in spiritual pollution.
After suffering this, Huselek Bernstein's condition worsened. Auditory and visual hallucinations began to intensify. He felt as if the flowers, plants, and trees around him had come to life and would devour him at any moment.
And the surroundings fell silent again. The young man with the scepter was gone, as if everything just now was just his hallucination. No, his face was stern, and he clenched his teeth, spitting out the words one by one. The manipulation of spirit threads is forbidden here.
As he uttered this prohibition, the blood in his throat seemed to be unstoppable, flowing from the corner of his mouth. With the forced use of the prohibition against Sequence 5 Beyonders, the rapid decline of his spirituality intensified the sluggishness of being manipulated by spirit threads.
The cross-sequence prohibition was weakened. The opponent didn't know what method he used, and he couldn't find the enemy's trace at all. He could only rely on a large-scale prohibition to try to break through.
I can't fight a war of attrition. I must attract the attention of others. The obstruction just now shows that the enemy in the dark doesn't want me to seek help, afraid that I will alarm the other Beyonders here. As soon as this thought appeared and the corresponding action was taken, time was also passing quietly. The marionettist hidden in the dark is always a patient hunter.
As the sequence, Tang Ziran, who summarized the acting rules, deeply understands this.
Euclidean space has an essential improvement to the marionettist. The few weaknesses of the marionettist's marionettization are the time it takes to marionette an enemy, and that during the marionettization period, the target must be within a certain distance of oneself, gradually controlling it to completely make the target one's marionette.
Within Euclidean space, all observed objects are in the same observable space. And what this space presents will change according to Tang's own wishes. By reducing dimensions, the ability to control spirit threads affects the target in the real world that needs to be marionetted. Even if the opponent uses substitutes or extraordinary powers such as travel, as long as they don't escape the range he can observe, then his manipulation of the spirit threads cannot be interrupted due to distance. As for the prohibition against manipulating spirit threads, separated by a layer of space, a prohibition that cannot find the source of manipulation cannot take effect normally, at most slowing down the time of marionetization and buying him a chance.
Now there is only one problem to worry about. If the other party attracts the attention of other Beyonders, before he completely marionettes this person, the other party has a chance to get help from his companions and get rid of this state. Tang calmly watched the course of events. The other party still had several mystical items on him, which Tang had already figured out. The other party must also be able to react. Now, the possibility of escaping alone or killing him is already so low that it is completely impossible to achieve. Unsurprisingly, the other party then took out a circular gemstone that exuded a dark luster, dotted with dazzling blue, like a fantastic treasure in the deep sea. He was a little slow, but he seemed very nervous, looked around solemnly, and solemnly wore the gemstone on his chest. In the next moment, as if a boiling oil pot had exploded, Huselek Bernstein opened his mouth, his voice mixed with rage and madness. Accompanied by the power of spirituality, the loud singing instantly pierced the air and surged around. That was a mystical item made from the Sequence 5, Ocean Singer Beyonder characteristic of the Tyrant pathway. And this ruin kernel wanted to use the negative effects of this mystical item to attract the attention of others with loud singing that was difficult to conceal. At the same time, that kind of sound is also extremely guiding, which can make people irritable, lose their minds, and become real thugs, acting entirely on muscle, leaving their brains behind. Tang didn't know what he was singing. It seemed to be folk songs. However, separated by a layer of space, no extraordinary ability could affect him. But this sound is really too unpleasant. Output relies entirely on roaring, without any skill. If an ocean singer can sing so badly, I would rather poison him mute. He seized the time to make the other party a marionette. As for whether this singing will attract the attention of others, Huselek Bernstein's voice was extremely penetrating. To be honest, mixed with spirituality, the sound could probably be heard in half of Saga Castle, but these sounds were stopped when they spread out of the manor. Softly chanting ancient Hermes, using the spell at the right time and in the right place, Owen watched as those few spells turned into specks of black light and merged into the air, letting the loud singing fall into death, without a trace of silent departure after spreading outward. This kind of advanced spell that can specify the death of something, belonging to the domain of death, is not lacking in their family. Host, come on, host will win. The system waved the flag and cheered in Tang's mind. The loud singing was isolated inside, and the people in this manner were misled by the extraordinary ability of the Sun Scepter manipulator, completely ignoring all problems, and unable to support their kernel. Under this situation, the enemy has only one ending. Tang countered every move. The other party took out a mystical item, and he solved a mystical item. This ruined colonel indeed had a lot of treasures, and he was quite cautious, carrying many mystical items, and some of them were quite troublesome to deal with. The dying crazy counterattack was also staggering. But in the end, the victor was still Tang. Before long, Huslik Bernstein quieted down. He calmly unloaded all the mystical items on his body. Tang, holding the Sun Scepter, also calmly appeared not far from the colonel. Looking at the gold coins that old geezer dropped all over the ground, Tang picked up the gem brooch that shimmered with deep blue and light gray light. The moment Tang touched the gem brooch, he felt an uncontrollable urge to sing a song, but fortunately, Tang already knew this and forcibly suppressed it with the extraordinary abilities of the Faceless and the Clown. Without injecting spirituality, the negative effects of this mystical item won't be too high if you just carry it. It's just that the negative effects of this level aren't too damaging, it just makes people want to live on another planet. If he were to howl like that in the middle of the night, the fun would be great. Tang held the sun staff, the twisted sun symbol at the head of the staff reflecting the reflection of the gem brooch. He could sense some of the characteristics of this mystical item. The sun staff was craving completeness, craving this sequence 5 mystical item. The Omniscient and Almighty had 5 pathways. Except for the Tyrant and the Reader, the extraordinary characteristics mixed from the other 3 pathways had all reached the level of a demigod. Completing itself was a manifestation of the law of extraordinary characteristic aggregation. When Tang noticed that there was a problem with the sun staff, he didn't immediately stuff it back into the system warehouse. He placed the deep blue and light gray gem brooch in his right hand and held it, and looked up at the sun staff he held in his left hand. You want this thing? As the time node when the sun floated up got closer and closer, Tang could vaguely sense that this thing had begun to show the characteristics of being alive. Usually, it doesn't show it, and it can even be said to be quite obedient and easy to use. This is probably because the sun staff often enters and exits the system space and the Euclidean space. The former is a small version of the knowledge wilderness, and the latter is a higher level, possibly close to the power of the outer gods. This, alive, characteristic naturally has good and bad sides, and because it has the alive characteristic, it is afraid of the system and the Euclidean space, and does not dare to cause harm to Tang casually because of its activity. After all, whether it is the system or the Euclidean space, it can't afford to provoke it with just a demigod-level extraordinary item. The situation was leaning towards the good, and Tang didn't care. As for completing its extraordinary characteristics, Tang played with the sapphire brooch with the clown's ability. Black sunlight faintly appeared on the sun staff. When it slightly moved its staff body, and the sunlight filled with twisted sun symbols was almost overflowing, the blue gem in Tang's hand suddenly disappeared. Sun staff. Then the blue gem suddenly appeared, and then disappeared again. Sun staff. The blue gem in Tang's hand flickered very quickly, and the sun staff was stunned and motionless, as if it was completely dumbfounded. What was that thing flashing there? Finally, because time was limited, Tang stuffed the sun staff and the extraordinary item made by the Ocean Singer into the system warehouse together, and would study them later. System. Host, you're busy with your things. The system rubbed its hands together, eager to try. Usually, it doesn't have much fun except for assisting its own host. The theater core hasn't been so fun since it started slacking off, and now another one has come. Anyway, as long as the sun doesn't float up, it's invincible in its own storage space. The sun staff could only stare blankly at the extraordinary characteristics that were close at hand, and glare at the system.
If it could curse, it would probably really curse.
Are you human? Are you still human? System, how do you know I'm not human? It really wasn't human. Hee hee, you gluttonous girl, just be greedy, you can see it but you can't eat it, hee hee.
Sun Staff. Hee hee you. Knowledge Wilderness. Tang directed his newly acquired marionette to clean up the extraordinary items on the ground. Before the extraordinary power that the Sun Staff had applied to the others in the manor was lifted, Tang and the new marionette had already cleaned up the mess and restored the battle scene. At the same time, Tang prayed to the theater core in Tingen for a miracle through the Ring of the Mastermind, using the power of a Sequence 2 miracle invoker to interfere with the divination.
After all, this is still the border guarded by a Sequence 4 demigod. Although the position of colonel is neither high nor low in the entire Loen military system, Huslik Bernstein himself is also a Sequence 6 extraordinary, and there may be other extraordinaries paying attention to him. Necessary interference measures cannot be lacking. At the same time, Tang also needs to familiarize himself with the colonel's style as soon as possible, otherwise even if he makes him into a marionette, his puppet show will be exposed.
Returning to the study that seemed to have not changed at all, Tang stood in front of the French window, looking at the books on the bookshelf, while setting the marionette's persona through the life experience seen in the Euclidean space, and also assessing his potion's digestion progress and the gains from this battle. The digestion progress has increased by 3%, which is okay.
The only thing that was heartbreaking was that he consumed a yesterday once more charm in the Euclidean space.
The spirituality of a Sequence 5 extraordinary was completely exhausted in just a few minutes of battle. The spirituality loss of the Euclidean space's dimension reduction was outrageously high. However, with this layer of space in between, my safety has also been greatly guaranteed. Well, this also meets the acting requirements of a trick magician.
A marionette master who cannot be found is much more frightening than a marionette master who can be found.
If he reaches Sequence 4 and can master the method of accurately deploying marionettes, and can shuttle back and forth between the real world and the Euclidean space through the ability to exchange positions with the marionettes, then the trick magician's extraordinary power will be infinitely amplified. On the surface, a marionette is discovered, and when the enemy is happily solving it, in reality, the Euclidean space is filled with marionettes, ready to crawl out and slap others in the face.
It's the temptation given by the mantis. The system passionately opened its microphone.
Tang. System, how many ocean singers have you eaten?
Basically grasping the persona of his new marionette, Tang turned his gaze back to the books on the bookshelf.
However, after impulsively marionetting and solving this scumbag, there are things that must be considered next.
For example, whether or not to install a bionic marionette module for this marionette. His current bionic marionette module can only be loaded and used by 3 marionettes. One was the task reward from the previous never-ending theater task, and 2 were opened from the surprise gift pack. 2 of them have already been used. He can't stay here for a long time. If he wants to bury a seed inside the Loen military, with Owen around, this doesn't seem like a necessary choice. Then, this marionette doesn't seem necessary for him. Let's consider it when we leave. Maybe this colonel will disappear and die in this mission against the dark side of the universe. He still has a use for the 3rd, bionic marionette module. Leaving it is much more cost-effective than wasting it on a Sequence 6. He's been dead for a while now. Clad in armor, around 30 years old, with a cold and stern demeanor and chiseled features, the man, whose aura suggested he had emerged from a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood, stated calmly. Beside him, a lady dressed in a form-fitting long robe, with her long hair styled up, gentle as the earth, had appeared by the riverbank at some point. Where she stood, flowers bloomed in profusion, embodying the gentleness and inclusiveness of nature. It certainly looks like some kind of evil sacrificial ritual.
Mr. Augustus, haven't you noticed anything on your side?
The lady asked softly. The one responsible for examining the corpses was a young man wearing a top hat, a well-tailored suit, with a high nose bridge, a broad forehead, and healthy tanned skin. He seemed out of place on the battlefield, more like a gentleman strolling through a high-class banquet. He had a pair of golden eyes, and beneath those eyes, which seemed to conceal lightning, he constantly scanned the surrounding corpses. After confirming that nothing was missing, he removed the gloves he had just used to touch the flesh and blood, and threw them into the river, which was completely contaminated with blood. He casually said, "Recently, Beyonders of the Abyss pathway have been trying to provoke wars between countries. I wonder if this counts." The gloves fell into the river, blooming with golden light, purifying the resentment, distortion, and depravity that remained there, and cleansing the spirits of the deceased. The lady, gentle as the earth, picked up a flower from the ground. Hearing what Augustus said, the flower bloomed in her hand, and the petals fell into the blood-stained water. "May the Mother Goddess protect them." The lady murmured something, while the two men beside her sorted through the information they had, and exchanged it with demigods from other countries to a limited extent. A Desire Apostle wants to start a war. Those lunatics from the blood worship sect who worship demons are becoming more and more rampant, the Intis demigod, clad in armor and possessing a tough guy aura, said coldly. The blood worship sect's demons have been making quite a few small moves recently, but as far as I know, there have also been several mass sacrifice cases in Intis recently, leading to the deaths of large numbers of residents in towns. "I don't know, I never care about those things," the Intis demigod said, "but this sacrificial ritual is a little different from the past." "Yes," Lubert Augustus said faintly, "the completeness of the ritual is increasing. We were only a little late, and the spirits of these victims have already suffered irreversible damage, becoming dark, twisted, and depraved, beyond salvation." The lady, as steady as the earth, had now finished her prayer. She raised her hand, and the surrounding flowers, plants, and trees suddenly grew rapidly, surrounding the corpses, twisted and hollow-eyed and arranged in various shapes, pulling them into the earth, returning them to the Mother Goddess's kingdom. At this time, by the Alexei River, the corpses had been buried, the contaminated blood had been purified, and everything had returned to peace once more. We must catch the mastermind behind the scenes. All of these actions by the blood worship sect, according to reliable information, are directed by a Desire Apostle, the lady said. Regardless of the friction between Loen, Intis, and Phenobot, this evil god who worships the dark side of the universe, who may even have received a response, must be eradicated as soon as possible. She dropped a bombshell, startling both demigods. The Intis demigod frowned. Received a response from an evil god? So, all the actions of the blood worship sect recently have been to serve the evil god they worship? Yes, the lady said softly, "I can feel the passage of life. There is an unnatural power at work here. This is definitely not the effect of a ritual that a sequence 5 demon of the abyss pathway could create. Demonic rituals themselves are accompanied by a large amount of blood sacrifice. The demons of the abyss want to provoke disputes between countries in order to plot a situation that is favorable to them." The Intis demigod sneered, "How interesting." The lady then spoke again, "If we are going to ask for help, it's better to ask for as much help as possible. From the completeness of the ritual and the feedback of the spirits and surrounding plants remaining here, I suspect that the Desire Apostle has received help from the dark side of the universe, has been promoted, and has acquired divinity." The demigods all frowned, then left the riverbank, leaving behind the corpses that had been completely buried in the purified river water. Just a few minutes after they left, a figure slowly detached from the spirit world. Tang and another traveler marionette appeared here. He first looked at the Hornassus Mountains not far away, looking at the towering peaks. The distant sun dispelled some of the fog that had accumulated on the mountains for years, revealing the lush vegetation on them, a completely ordinary and commonplace appearance. And he could feel the throbbing, coming from somewhere in the Hornassus Mountains. It was an instinctive longing derived from the law of the convergence of extraordinary characteristics. Fortunately, I know what's on the mountain, otherwise, if I followed the wishes of my heart, maybe when I walked into the mountains and walked to a certain tree, I would suddenly find a deserted town, and a ceiling full of marionettes constantly shouting, "Hornassus, Flagra." The most uptack new uptack small uptack said uptack is uptack in uptack first uptack hair. Tang breathed a sigh of relief. He didn't plan to go up the mountain to meet Antigonus, the angel king who was half a step away from being a fool, for the time being. After all, it is a secret town created by the goddess of the night. Without complete preparation, even if I want to advance to sequence 1, the seer of mysteries, I don't plan to venture in.
He couldn't figure out the goddess of the night's attitude towards this. After all, his own buffs were stacked even higher than Klein's, who knew if the goddess would let it go or give him a hand to make him completely quiet. Retracting his gaze, Tang re-examined his surroundings.
Those few just now should be the demigods stationed on the border by Loen, Intis, and Phenobot, but I didn't expect that it wasn't the extraordinary people from the three major churches on Loen who discovered the problem, but the followers of the Earth Mother who discovered the anomaly.
But no matter who it was good that they noticed it. Putting the Traveler marionette into the system space, Tang re-entered the Euclidean space to find the traces left by the descender of the dark side of the universe.
This place has obviously been cleaned up. The extraordinary people of the Abyss pathway are even better at anti-divination and anti-prophecy. They have interfered with it, making it impossible for demigods of other pathways to find him through divination. This is very simple. Tang looked at the remaining spirituality in the Euclidean space, belonging to the dead, so weak that it could hardly be perceived, and would soon completely dissipate, polluted to the point that only the purest fear remained. Slowly, following the direction in which the spirituality spread, he looked into the distance. That should be where the descender is. If the time interval hadn't been short enough, and the dark side of the universe descender hadn't killed those people to perform the ritual and arrived shortly after, these traces wouldn't have remained to be observed by Euclidean space. Ordinary people's spirituality, even if tainted with immense negative emotions, would hardly produce any extraordinary effects.
Host, what's the next step? Of course, it's to figure out the location of the dark side of the universe descender, and then write a report to the church. I can't possibly deal with such a dangerous guy all by myself.
Tang said matter-of-factly. The system's entire core felt unwell. This. Host, don't you think your behavior is a little too practiced? As a law-abiding citizen, reporting heretical sacrifices and demon-worshipping guys to the church is my bounden duty.
Tang lectured his own system, then followed the faint traces left by the spiritual bodies in a good mood, continuing his pursuit.
He had been chasing for quite some time. As the sun set, the crimson moon gradually rose from the east, casting a faint red halo over the earth, making it appear even more tranquil and distant. After the spiritual power of the dead had completely dissipated, Tang still hadn't found the dark side of the universe descender, and could only continue tracking using the previous method. Through Euclidean space, a certain degree of travel could be achieved, but the spirituality consumed by this travel was much higher than that of a traveler, though it was more secretive and the observed range was also larger. To this end, Tang borrowed Euclidean space, the traveler's mystic puppet, and a telescope for observing the stars. By dividing the surrounding area and having the system calculate the most suitable travel route, he would arrive at the destination and then enter Euclidean space again, using the telescope for precise positioning. The three cooperated with each other, using the least amount of spiritual consumption and the most secretive method to carpet search for the location of the dark side of the universe descender. It's a bit stupid, but given the lack of spirituality and my own safety concerns, this is the only way. But the diligent are bound to be rewarded. Tang consumed 2 precious yesterday once more charms, and finally found the location of the dark side of the universe descender. It was a valley. A faint black mist drifted out from the depths of the valley. The crimson moon hung high overhead, but the red moonlight seemed to have no brightness, being inversely eroded when it came into contact with the black mist, thereby producing more black mist. It was like the abyss eroding the entire world reappearing. Tang hid in Euclidean space, observing the internal situation. He had put on mosaic glasses beforehand, fearing that encountering something incomprehensible would immediately cause him to lose control and go mad. The facts proved that his worries were not unfounded. When he observed the internal situation of that valley, he cautiously only used his vision to observe, and everywhere his gaze reached was covered in thick mosaics. Things that cannot be seen, sounds that cannot be heard, things that must not be touched, layer upon layer, surged upwards from the cracks in the earth, making it impossible to obtain any useful information. Host, there's strong interference. Faced with this situation, Tang risked leaving Euclidean space. In a place extremely far away from that dense black mist, he He first used the never-ending theater to prematurely pray for the miracle of interference, and then had the system cast an appraisal, but the result was obvious. A large area of pollution. This is indeed one of the ways to resist observation. The sequence level of him and the system combined was not enough to ignore the possible abyss pollution, so being blocked out was inevitable. And the system's appraisal, the power mobilized, could not get any feedback from the dark side of the universe descender, connected to an ancient god. At the same time, Tang's spiritual intuition was triggered. It was his spirit-body thread. Something was wrong with a mystic puppet. What happened? This time, Tang learned his lesson. Instead of directly manipulating the spirit-body thread to control the distant mystic puppet, he directly inquired through the connection between himself and the mystic puppet, the bionic mystic puppet module. Sigarberg has become chaotic. Lubert Augustus was assassinated and killed. According to intelligence obtained from Wistreich Bernstein, it seems to be a high-sequence Beyonder of the Gardner pathway. The military high command believes this was done by Beyonders from the other two countries. They have already begun dispatching troops, wanting to start a war directly. Lubert Augustus was assassinated and killed. And it was a demigod of the Gardner pathway. Tang confirmed that there was nothing wrong with his mystic puppet, then immediately connected the spirit-body thread, using the mystic puppet's eyes as his own to survey the place he had left not long ago. At this time, Sigarberg was ablaze with fire. The sound of armor and weapons clashing, the frantic shouts, and at the highest point of the entire city, there, flowers that did not exist before were now growing, being scorched by flames, twisting their bodies. Sigarberg had just suffered a sudden attack from a demigod, and Lubert Augustus, also a demigod, had died directly. No, something is not right. A battle between demigods could never end so simply, especially on the territory of Loen, with the support of sealed artifacts and other military high-ranking officials. How could a Gardner pathway demigod, who is not good at assassination, kill Lubert Augustus? Tang frowned deeply. Just now, he did see several demigods, one of whom looked like a high-sequence Beyonder of the Arbiter pathway. That might be Lubert Augustus, the demigod-level powerhouse stationed on the Loen border. And the one who assassinated him was a demigod of the Gardner pathway. That demigod stationed on the border of Fenport? Was she influenced by the abyss, silently controlled by the dark side of the universe descender? Host, someone is coming. The system's voice suddenly rang out. Tang immediately controlled his body, his figure slowly fading, entering Euclidean space. The worst thing has still happened. Seeing the person who came, his heart also skipped a beat. It was a lady. Compared to her previous gentle and steady appearance like the earth, at this time her eyes were dull, muttering to herself, barefoot, approaching here step by step. And there was something even more bizarre, even more terrifying. This, Tang exclaimed in a low voice, and at the same time, through Euclidean space, outside the distant black mist, under the illumination of the crimson moon, countless illusory and transparent things flew towards this side. That was. Tang immediately picked up the yesterday once more charm in his hand. Those were spiritual bodies. Countless spiritual bodies, killed spiritual bodies. Those numb spirits seemed to be guided by some kind of power, flying towards the valley. Absolutely cannot let these spirits be corrupted by the abyss. New task updated. Task: gaze from the abyss. The dark side of the universe, struggling to escape from a certain state, has been dormant for a long time. This time, it has finally found a perfect way. When the eyes that gaze into the abyss also show the shadows of the abyss, when the sun is no more, when plants wither, when spirituality is extinguished, when all things fall into the land of depravity, the hand symbolizing the most filth and depravity will personally push open the gates of the abyss. Note: this task is extremely dangerous. Please choose carefully, host. Tang ignored the system's task reminder. His spiritual intuition was going wild, and his first thought was that he absolutely could not let those spirits merge into the black mist. His figure suddenly reappeared where he had just disappeared, leaving the protection of Euclidean space, and the high-level talisman belonging to the domain of death in his hand was also crushed instantly. There's no time to wait for the Beyonders from the three major churches to arrive. We must take advantage of the fact that the gates of the abyss have not yet opened and severely damaged the universe's dark side's avatar.
At least, we must prolong the opening time of the abyss gate. Death. As the ancient Hermes' words were chanted in a low voice, an invisible, silent force seemed to connect to the underworld, using the talisman as a carrier to spread wildly in all directions. At the same time, the black mist in the distant valley seemed to sense the abnormality. The black mist expanded violently, eroding the crimson moon and the entire world at an unimaginable speed. In just an instant, the black mist, which had previously been far away, surged towards the countless numb spirits. They were trying to pollute the spirits of these dead before the high-level death domain talisman radiated to this area, transforming them through the abyss, turning them into monsters, wraiths, and vehicles for the abyss to invade the world. But Tang would not let it succeed. Law dictates. The yesterday once more talisman in Tang's hand had disappeared, replaced by a piece of parchment.
The parchment had a heavy historical aura, illusory yet real, seemingly filled with segments of history, and possessing an indescribable, lofty feeling.
Within Euclidean space, he borrowed a copy of the uniqueness, Terenzo's brass book, from his future self, a parchment inscribed with corresponding rules. Demons are absolutely unclean creatures, and no life using demonic power should exist here.
Those who violate this shall be sentenced to death.
The parchment opened silently, revealing the mercury-like flowing script inside.
Those words shared similarities with all languages currently in use, being the language first used by intelligent life, the source of all languages.
As it was revealed, an invisible deterrent force erupted from the parchment. This power, dignified without anger, natural and effortless, like the innate, underlying rules of this world, covered the entire valley and its surroundings faster than the death talisman and the abyss's black mist. In the next moment, it enveloped the entire valley and its surroundings. At the same time, chains shot out from Tang's hands, dividing into 2, and then into 4, weaving the laws belonging to the law enforcer, forcibly enhancing the reality of this place where the abyss gate was about to open.
Subjected to the rules of Terenzo's brass book, and the laws of the law enforcer, the black mist, which was like an abyss incarnation capable of devouring the crimson moon's light, immediately became clear and bright, like the most ordinary thing without any extraordinary power from any domain. Even when it passed through those numb and hollow spirits, it did not cause them any harm. In the next moment, the power of the death talisman arrived. The death pathway and the black night pathway belong to adjacent pathways that can be interchanged, and there are also areas of mutual integration in terms of authority. High-level death domain talismans can also perform certain functions of the black night pathway. For example, purifying all these spirits in an instant and sending them to the kingdoms of their respective gods. Tang watched as the spirits were completely purified by the talisman, then turned his gaze towards the depths of the valley. A woman in the distance had already fallen to the ground, her expression changing from the previous emptiness and numbness to hideous pain. Here, any demonic power is forbidden, and naturally, the demonic power buried in this demigod's heart also falls within this scope. The second flaw of Euclidean space is that if there is no detailed observation, but only a general observation, problems deep within the mental level are difficult to detect. Tang had seen this demigod, but had not discovered the problem from within Euclidean space. This was due to his own sequence being insufficient and the time being too rushed. If he were to deal with high-sequence beyonders of the spectator pathway, especially the 008 type, his own sequence level would need to be raised, and his control over that space would also need to be strengthened. Of course, these were all future matters, and the power of the abyss. You gaze into the abyss, and the abyss gazes also into you. Tang's mind recalled the words he often saw in his previous life. And according to his knowledge of mysticism, when trying to understand the abyss, contact the abyss, and attempt to find something from the abyss, the inner mind of the pursuer will naturally be corroded by the abyss, because there lies the dark side of the universe that can even corrupt gods. This corruption was silent and imperceptible, and even demigod-level beyonders could not detect or resist it when encountering it. It was likely that this woman had already been unknowingly corrupted in the continuous events while constantly receiving information from the abyss,
actively pursuing the blood sacrifice sect, and disrupting those bloody rituals. This led to her tracking down the traces of the universe's dark side's avatar and being immediately manipulated by the other party, amplifying her own emotions, and then killing the demigod of Loen. This woman could not be a helper, and might even become his enemy in the next moment. Tang quickly came to a conclusion in his mind, and at the same time, countless chains pierced towards the distance, carrying the reality-enhancing laws, wanting to capture that universe's dark side's avatar. But in the next moment, a filthy power was transmitted from the chains in the distance. "You look very interesting." As if inspired, Tang's mind buzzed with the filthy words. His spiritual intuition was stirred, and images of the distance involuntarily surfaced in his mind. It was a desolate valley, in the depths of a dense darkness. Countless chains pierced through it, and surrounded in the very center of the chains was a middle-aged man wearing a black hood, of medium height, with ordinary features but appearing gloomy and cold, not like a living person. His eyes seemed to pierce through space, staring directly at Tang's side. The power of the uniqueness of the judge. His voice was hoarse, and every word seemed depraved, dark, twisted, and insane. In the next moment, a small black speck appeared on the corner of the parchment in front of Tang. A magician never performs without preparation. Even as the situation worsened, with the extraordinary individuals from the three major churches yet to arrive, and the gate to the abyss about to open, Tang remained calm. Before this, he had already anticipated some sudden situations that might arise in the future, and without the ability to protect himself, he would not, and could not, intervene. Faced with a corner of the law promulgated by the Terenzo Street Bronze Book being corrupted, Tang produced a hammer emitting a faint light. Gold hammer, silver hammer. Quality, system exclusive. A magical item provided by the system. Its power depends on the strength of the artisan module. Extraordinary power. The gold hammer can temporarily enhance a certain physical, mystical attribute of the item being struck, while the silver hammer can temporarily weaken a certain physical, mystical attribute of the item being struck. Negative impact. 100 knowledge fragments per hour. Previously, the system provided this magical item, and under the condition of consuming more knowledge fragments, it could forcibly raise extraordinary items of the mid-sequence level to reach the demigod level, and now that the system possesses the power of a demigod, it will be able to provide even greater assistance. You are very strange. Facing the avatar of a god from the dark side of the universe, Tang did not lose control due to the opponent's insane divinity. It must be known that below the demigod level, as long as demigods even touch each other, without even deliberately targeting, the aftermath of the battle would cause mid and low sequence extraordinary individuals to lose their combat abilities, or even their lives. But Tang's current state is quite special. You are not a demigod. Tang put on mosaic glasses, shielding the interference of the spiritual level on him, preventing him from seeing the abyss and mythical creatures. However, you have divinity, abrupt divinity, on you. This is not an effect that extraordinary items can grant. Your sequence level must not have reached the demigod level, and moreover, the extraordinary abilities you possess contradict and conflict with the power your body exhibits. Tang raised the hammer in his hand. Your spirit body is very special? Haha, I can see that your spirit body and your body don't seem to be a good match. You have a secret hidden within you, and what is that secret? The voice of the god avatar from the dark side of the universe was hollow and full of bewitchment, the voice coming in segments, each word, each string of sentences carrying deep malice and probing. Both the system and Tang knew that once Tang's emotions were stirred up, he would be met with even deeper levels of contamination from the abyss. The scenes Tang had just seen, the contamination he had suffered, were all forcibly resisted by the system. Having divinity and not having divinity makes a complete difference in the degree of resistance to contamination. Faced with the contamination of the abyss, neither Tang nor the system would be careless. Now that the rules promulgated by the Terenzo Street Bronze Book, pulled out by the historical projection, cannot completely restrict the power of this god avatar from the dark side of the universe, then raise the power of the Terenzo Street Bronze Book again. The artisan module is ready. 500 knowledge fragments have been consumed, and it is preheating. Tang decisively abandoned the already contaminated chains and instead grabbed the parchment in front of him. Golden light spots emanated from the gold hammer, and then Tang struck the parchment, which was being rapidly eroded by black spots, with a hammer. 500 knowledge fragments have been consumed. This enhancement of yours will release some of the power of the Terenzo Street Bronze Book that is restricted by the mist of history. The mechanical system prompt sounded, and the parchment suddenly lit up with twinkling, brilliant light, with countless mystical symbols integrated into it, strengthening its connection with the mist of history and Euclidean space. In the next moment, the symbols flowing like mercury on the parchment lit up. In the distance, the middle-aged man of medium stature, but appearing gloomy, cold, and unlike a living person, slightly furrowed his brow. Around him were countless bones, animals, plants, and humans, their flesh completely stripped away, carved together on the ground, on the stone walls, and on the dense white bones, one wriggling, twisted symbol after another. They seemed like they would come to life at any moment, would become a part of the abyss, would become pioneers helping him open the gate to the abyss, artificial demons created by spirituality, divinity, flesh, and contamination. Even with the rules promulgated by the uniqueness of the judge pathway and the sealing of a sequence 4 magical item, these jumping, twisted symbols did not show any signs of being suppressed.
But now, all of this has changed. More powerful, more domineering rules forcibly suppressed these restless symbols.
An invisible mental whip lashed down from midair. The symbols themselves, built of flesh and blood, were manifestations of demonic power, and should not exist within the rules, so they were invisibly erased and destroyed, losing their original purpose.
An indescribable emotion flashed in the middle-aged man's sunken eye sockets.
Faced with this situation, he stretched out his hand, and the fallen, twisted power spread to the surroundings in an instant.
The surrounding black mist, like a natural phenomenon, was replenished with power again, gaining extraordinary abilities.
They came to life, as before, surging towards the red moon and the distant figure. But an even more powerful mental scourge lashed towards the middle-aged man fiercely. The guilty shall be sentenced to death. The mist of history rolled in, connecting the past and the future closely through Euclidean space. Under the operation of the system, the influence of the Terenzo Street Bronze Book on the past, which originally belonged to the future, was rapidly strengthening.
The demonic power, which was suppressed again, caused the affected chains to regain their strength.
Countless chains responded to the uniqueness of this pathway, and its power was also unprecedentedly strengthened. The chains slashed across the earth, destroying demonic symbols, blocking the black mist, and each chain that split out began to split out more chains, layer upon layer, rushing towards the only great demon here.
The middle-aged man was fierce and decisive. He decisively abandoned the idea of opening the gate to the abyss here and instead detonated the remaining demonic symbols. The demonic symbols shattered, the contamination was intense and nauseating, and at the same time, Tang saw more spiritual bodies flying from the distance. The spiritual bodies that had just been sent away by the advanced rune of the death domain were only a minority of the many flying spiritual bodies. The long-term planning of the blood worship sect had provided many sacrifices to the dark side of the universe. Now, these sacrificed spiritual bodies were flocking here one after another from all over the world. The range that angels can respond to is the whole world, and no matter how much the dark side of the universe is regarded as the shame of the true God, the radiation range of his power is also the whole world. A deep black color flashed in Tang's eyes, and in the next moment, he disappeared from the spot. Entering Euclidean space, Tang held the sun staff, took the yesterday once more charm, and ascended into the sky, at this moment, outside Sagaberg. Owen raised his head, his expression extremely solemn. Traveler Angie appeared silently behind him, also in a state of looking up at the sky. They activated their spirit vision. In the eyes of Beyonders skilled in spirit vision, they saw things that ordinary people could not see. In the sky, the scarlet moon was bright and serene, as if it had existed forever, yet it also had an unspeakable desolation and decay. Beneath the scarlet moon, countless translucent spirits, beyond the range that normal humans could perceive, were flying rapidly into the distance. These spirits were either tall or short, male or female, either a dying old man, or an innocent child. Their spirits were either incomplete or complete, either newly dead, or had been dead for a long time, buried deep in the ground, becoming vengeful souls. They had different forms and different spiritual powers. Among them were many beyonders, spirits tempered by magical potions, but without exception, at this moment they were all numbly drifting away with some kind of force. This is not right, none of this is right. As Owen, who had already advanced to Sequence 5 Gatekeeper of the Death Pathway, he was also an expert in spirits and related rituals. However, the military seemed to have completely failed to notice the spirits in the sky. They were blinded by anger, forgetting all the consequences. I'm afraid it's the effect of a ritual magic, gathering the dead, unscattered souls, Owen whispered. Moreover, this sudden battle is also problematic. Angie used the extraordinary power of the recorder to skillfully avoid the surrounding crowd, only communicating with Owen on a spiritual level. They were currently in the army, and the fully armed troops were acting secretly under the orders of the military high command, planning to cross the Alexei River and attack Feniport's border fortress under the gaze of the Crimson Moon. The actions of the military high command at this time were too strange. The lower-level officers could not detect it, and even if they did, they would subconsciously ignore these somewhat abnormal arrangements because of the current atmosphere. After the death of the demigod Rupert Augustus, the military high command should have immediately reported it to the Loen royal family to stabilize the border situation, instead of attacking Feniport here at night, tit for tat. But their current actions were completely aimed at truly starting a war. In today's unstable situation, once a war breaks out, it will undoubtedly be a heavy blow to the three countries and the Orthodox churches. The chaotic and missing anchors will also have a considerable impact on the 7 gods who maintain the seal. But this atmosphere is obviously very wrong. The people around are full of enthusiasm, and emotions such as tension and fear are unbelievably low. This is not the reaction a normal person should have. But Owen couldn't detect where this wrongness came from. The anger in his heart was also swelling, as if only seeing the enemy's blood could soothe the violently fluctuating emotions. He subconsciously felt that something was wrong, and the secret totem symbolizing the feathered serpent faintly appeared on his armor. Calm down, don't be manipulated by your emotions. As a secret puppet, Angie should not have such emotions, but the existence of the bionic secret puppet module allows her to break away from the control of the secret master. However, similarly, the defects of the bionic secret puppet module also give her the weakness of emotions. It's like the most perfect artificial creation is equipped with an antenna, but it also produces its own artificial will, for better or for worse. However, once any emotional fluctuations that violate her persona appear, they will be detected by the secret puppet itself. This is also why, after the death of the demigod Rupert Augustus, when the pollution leaked from the other party's shattered spirit affected the entire city, she still remained awake, able to rationally maintain her emotions and reversely discover the reason for the pollution. That demigod has been completely polluted, becoming one of the ways the dark side of the universe affects the real world. Which ancient god who has survived to this day doesn't have a few tricks up their sleeve? Calming down a little, Owen asked, "How are things on your side? Do you need help?" Angie glanced at Owen, then shook her head. She could no longer contact Tang, and the spirit thread with that side had also been completely severed. Tang should have concentrated all of her spirituality to fight the descender from the dark side of the universe. And now all of her actions are spontaneous behaviors based on the bionic secret puppet module. Of course, she can directly contact her producer and inform the system. You have already found the descender from the dark side of the universe. Owen, who was never very smart, immediately saw something from the secret puppet's reaction. Where are you? How is the situation over there? Facing Owen, who didn't know about the existence of the bionic secret puppet module and still regarded her as a secret puppet, how could Angie answer? She could only smile and face the bleak life with a smile. Smile without saying a word. JPG. Being a secret puppet is really a job that anyone can do, and once you do it, you don't say a word. She finally understood the thoughts of the theater core, and had the beautiful expectation of wanting to die and fall into eternal sleep. Owen, where is the source of the spirits? He asked in a low voice.
Angie glanced at Owen again, and Owen returned the same smile. Angie had no choice but to slowly disappear into the spirit world. I'll go take a look. You follow the main force, don't mess around. The high-level members of the Night and Storm Church should be here soon. As for the demigod of the Artisan Church, those who understand will understand.
In the last few seconds before entering the spirit world, she still leaned over and instructed, absolutely, absolutely do not mess around.
Don't worry. Owen nodded, looking very steady and reliable. Angie's expression was suspicious, but thinking that she was also a traveler, just to determine the source of the spirits, what could go wrong in a few minutes? That's right, right. The moment Angie left, Owen turned and entered the crowd. A gale swept in. The night suddenly descended, and the scarlet moon appeared even larger. The thoughts of the impatient crowd quickly calmed down at this moment.
The wind is coming. Behind those countless spirits, two more figures appeared at some point.
The two people didn't say much. The gale accompanied the peaceful and deep darkness, following the direction of the spirits together. Inside a valley with a strong bloody smell. The earth had cracked into a deep and slender crevice at some point. This seemed to be the eye of something, and a thick black mist was constantly pouring out from it, merging with the countless symbols that were constantly being shattered by mental whips, giving birth to many black and round monsters, with a huge eyeball occupying most of the body, and the rest covered in slender fluff. Those monsters were constantly being killed by the escalating punishments of the Trentist Bronze Book, and constantly merging with the black mist to resurrect, endlessly spreading outward. Even with the gates of the abyss sealed by the Trentist Brass Book, and the laws of reality reinforcement, the existence of a cosmic dark side god's descender is enough for some of its authority to overflow.
And this small overflow is enough to cause extremely terrible disasters to the real world.
When the historical fog used by the Trentist Brass Book can no longer hold on, the gaze from the abyss will descend upon the real world. Now, all the actions of these people are only delaying this process. As long as the gate of the abyss is opened, his mission will be completed. At that time, even if the night, the sun, and the storm descend, they can only clean up the mess for themselves. The cosmic dark side god's descender looked at the demigod who appeared in front of him at some unknown time, tilted his head, and the malice and excitement in his eyes were almost unbearable.
Marionette. That was a tall man wearing ancient armor, with no emotional fluctuations in his ancient, waveless eyes, lacking the emotions that humans should have.
Red Priest Pathway Sequence 3, War Bishop. When Tang left Tingen, he brought this marionette of the highest level he could reach. Sequence 3, even in the battle of the angel level, is a powerful combat force. And the never-ending theater, even as a sealed artifact formed by the extraordinary characteristics of a Sequence 2 miracle inventor, its range of manipulating marionettes cannot span most of Ruin and directly extend here. Those who can manipulate Sequence 3 marionettes, besides Tang, also include the sealed artifact, a moment of luck, formed by the combined extraordinary characteristics of the Trickmaster and the winner. However, this War Bishop, his manipulator is neither Tang nor a moment of luck.
Under the influence of the Trentist Brass Book, the power of the demons cannot be fully utilized. The War Bishop grabbed the iron chain on the side. In just an instant, the iron chain piercing towards the middle-aged man seemed to have been subjected to extremely tyrannical force, flying high, like a heavy hammer, smashing down fiercely from top to bottom. With a loud roar, the earth trembled violently, like an earthquake. The middle-aged man's body swelled up, and as soon as the smell of sulfur appeared, mental flaying and death punishment followed. The silver-white, constantly flowing characters on the parchment enlarged and shrank one by one, as if shouting something, resonating with the historical fog and the Euclidean space, constantly projecting power from the future to the past. Logically speaking, the yesterday reappearance charm borrows the power of uniqueness, and even the incidental products of uniqueness cannot last too long, but now the power of this rule is further strengthened, and there is no sign of decline. This is the grafting of the past and the future. The middle-aged man could not understand this mystery. Before he could react, the War Bishop had already appeared in front of him. Both the Red Priest and the Abyss are extraordinary pathways extremely good at melee combat. In the next moment,
The two forces collided together, and the powerful wind and wanton spirituality and divinity were like pollution, frantically devouring the ordinary things around them. The cosmic dark side god's descender, while dealing with this marionette, wanted to pollute the other party's spiritual threads and find the hidden marionette master. After the sudden rise of the sense of danger disappeared in an instant, the strange marionette master disappeared, making him a little concerned.
If there isn't a high-sequence meander of the seer pathway hidden nearby, then the hidden marionette master has a magical item hidden on him that can control high-sequence marionettes.
Whichever it is, he needs to be wary. Beyonders who can avoid his gaze and hide many secrets must be paid attention to. And in the next moment, flames suddenly burst out from the war bishop's body, and the cosmic dark side god's descender's figure suddenly became sluggish. His spiritual threads were grabbed. A spirit worm that had already died was now safely staying in the war bishop's marionette's body. It seemed that a gaze was cast from a very distant place, manipulating the spiritual threads of the demon in front of him through this spirit worm, trying to transform him into a marionette.
This prevented the cosmic dark side god's descender from pursuing the disappeared marionette master around him.
A troublesome marionette, a troublesome uniqueness.
He restrained the madness in his eyes that wanted to kill everything in front of him, and the earth also trembled at this moment.
He wanted to forcibly open the gate of the abyss, let the power of the abyss dissipate more, destroy the rules here, and let the rules also be polluted. Inside the Euclidean space, rising to the center of the entire space, the scene within 100 miles was fully presented in front of Tang. He held the sun scepter, raised it high, and faced the crimson moon in front of him.
He could not control Sequence 3 marionettes, nor did he use the magical item, a moment of luck.
He installed a bionic marionette module on that war bishop. Let the theater core in Tingnan control the Sequence 3 war bishop. Separated by such a long distance, and with the levels of the two being high enough, the extraordinary power of the abyss pathway to capture emotions and corrupt people's minds would not work on the marionette. And the bionic marionette module. Who said this thing can only be used on one's own marionette? This, the system screamed. You shouldn't have advanced to Trickmaster, the parasite next door is more suitable for you. No way, nothing like that. Tang perfunctorily said to his own system, then his figure suddenly left the Euclidean space and appeared in the air of the real world. He had already borrowed spirituality from his future self in the Euclidean space. After replenishing it, Tang used the Euclidean space to achieve short-distance travel, and snapped his left finger in the air with the Master of Ceremonies ring on it.
I pray for a miracle. In an instant, the crimson moon disappeared.
The demon seemed to notice something. With just a moment of distraction, his stomach was fiercely pressed against the war bishop's fist and was sent flying out. Flames instantly enveloped the demon, and the aroma emitted by the flesh was nauseating. He would not die easily, Tang knew, and the theater core also knew. In just an instant, the crimson moon disappeared, and a dazzling sun appeared in the sky, replacing the original gentle and peaceful moon. The Master of Ceremonies ring can be regarded as a prop pointing to the never-ending theater with ritualistic effects. Even if it is far away, facing the angels, as long as the spirituality is stimulated, the theater core that can respond to the whole world can provide feedback. Reversal of the sun and moon, this is a miracle. In the next moment, Tang poured spirituality into the sun scepter in his hand. Praise the sun, praise the sun, praise the sun. Numerous spirits were still flying towards this place from afar. Tang raised the sun scepter, and the twisted sun symbol turned into black sunlight. Let us praise the sun, black sunlight, firepower coverage. The sun in the sky was shrouded in shadow. Twisted, fallen, dark, and insane shadows veiled the sun's eyes, and a black sun, utterly unlike the light, warmth, and evil-dispelling warmth of the sun, was born in its place. Then came sunlight, like the sun itself, pouring down.
The grass, trees, soil, and stones of the valley, the opened cracks in the ground, the people within, the demons one after another, the insects, birds, and beasts, even the ritual symbols, were all showered with black sunlight. It was a storm of the sun, a storm of corruption. The twisted power gave lifeless matter the characteristic of being alive, and they shouted in unison. Praise the sun, praise the sun, praise the sun.
Sun, sun, praise the sun, 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 praise the sun. The song, like spiritual pollution, seemed to burst forth from every ray of sunlight, from the spirituality of every corrupted life, like a black tide, the black sunlight instantly devouring everything it touched.
The countless spirits that flew in had not yet touched the abyss, had not yet merged into the abyss, when they were stained by the black sunlight, and the translucent spiritual power turned black, and a happy, twisted smile appeared on their numb faces.
They opened their mouths wide, shouting as if in a frenzy.
Praise the sun. They no longer moved forward, no longer attracted by the ritual, their bodies turned black, no longer possessing the pure light of spirituality, their bodies transforming into twisted sun symbols, turning into black sunlight, and then, in a frenzy of shouts praising the sun, they scattered around, polluting everything like a plague.
Eating a marine singer can turn you into this ghostly appearance. Tang couldn't help but rub his arms, goosebumps almost rising. Acting against those spirits was already the greatest effort he could make given the current situation. Tang didn't have much, nor could he have such a large number of high-level curses from the death domain, capable of eliminating all the spirits that flew in. That was impossible for him, a sequence 5 of the seer pathway. He wasn't good at clearing spirits on a large scale. And once these spirits stepped into the ritual range that the outer god Descender was conducting, they would probably become a force to open the abyss. Therefore, he could only pollute these spirits in advance. It was better than them abetting the evildoers, becoming nourishment for the abyss, and allowing the outer god to invest more influence into the real world. The premise of purification is having the ability. Forcing purification without the ability is just being a saint. Wherever the sunlight shone, there were no colorful hues. All were pitch black. All living beings radiated by the black sun also became carriers of the black sun, becoming new sources of pollution, constantly spreading outward. All of this was intense spiritual pollution. The extraordinary power of the sun scepter erupted with all its might at this moment, and the impact it caused could be described as terrifying. Ah, 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 in the distance, the farmer pathway demigod who had fallen to the ground sat up at some unknown time, with many black spots growing on her face and body. Those spots were like things that used her flesh and blood as nourishment, her mind, her spirit, everything as nutrients, emitting a pungent stench, full of filth and depravity. The beating black sun took those spots as its center, and her face seemed to have its own will, beginning to praise the sun spontaneously. No, I don't want to. Flowers grew from her body, but withered extremely quickly, becoming lifeless. The earth trembled slightly, and arms carved from rock grew out from within, trying to pull her body underground, to avoid this terrifying black tide. But the decaying and filthy aura constantly flowed out of those spots and was eroding her other normal parts, making her suffer, go mad, and lose her mind.
Something was overflowing from her body, which caused her control over those alchemical products to decline sharply.
Starting from the body, it eroded until the mind was completely corrupted. Her mind had already been corrupted by the outer god, and even if the black sunlight hadn't polluted her, she would have become one of the carriers for the abyss to expand into the real world. Her shadow unknowingly stood up in the world full of black suns, its dark, gentle hands caressing her neck, and before she completely turned into a pool of oil, with a crisp cracking sound, the woman's cry for help came to an abrupt end. The shadow stood behind the woman, grabbed her body, and entered the ground with the earth golems that had all turned into black sunlight.
Now, the battle between the war bishop and the outer god Descender continued.
Under the shroud of the black sunlight, within the affected area, except for the location of the Transcendence brass book, and Tang as the user, the other areas had been completely covered. Interesting, really interesting. The shadow behind the outer god Descender had no reaction, and even this purely dark environment made him nostalgic. Filth, depravity, darkness, distortion. Do you think this kind of thing will affect me?
No, 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 it won't. In the mockery of this god Descender, the fallen creatures around him who were attacking him because of the black sunlight turned against him and went to pollute the war bishop instead. In the extraordinary world, the abilities covered by a domain, a kind of authority, will be dispersed in multiple pathways, presenting a situation where the main pathway concentrates a large amount, and the remaining pathways divide the remaining part.
Unsurprisingly, the Abyss and the Hanged Man are both pathways that grasp the authority of domains such as depravity. And facing the outer god Descender, the Sun Scepter's control of depravity could not compare, and would be manipulated in reverse. Even, he could use this large-scale pollution, this environment similar to the Abyss, to try to open the gate of the Abyss again. I told you, magicians don't do unprepared performances. The next moment, from the center of the fallen sun in the sky, a compressed black sunlight fell vertically. Entering Euclidean space, and using a yesterday reappearance charm again, Tang interfered with the demon's sense of danger through the method of dimensional reduction, so that it could not detect his attack intention in advance, allowing this god Descender to completely eat a black sunlight.
Chains of iron suddenly rose from the ground, the black flames in the war bishop's hand under the sun's light devoured him, the spirit worms in his body grabbed the demon's spirit threads, and the mercury symbols written on the parchment of the Transcendence brass book jumped up to bind the outer god Descender and forced him to eat this black sun. And his face also became distorted under the crazy devastation of the sunlight. Faint, dim light emanated from his body. The extraordinary power of the Sun Authority Scepter's corruption domain indeed couldn't affect the dark side of the universe, which also held the corruption authority within the same pathway. But who said the Sun Authority Scepter only possessed extraordinary abilities from the corruption domain? It also contained extraordinary characteristics from the other four pathways. Sun Pathway Sequence 4, No Darkness. It could forcibly and continuously purify filth, forcibly strip away extraordinary characteristics, reduce the level of extraordinary beings, and even cause them to degenerate into ordinary people. As a component of the Sun Authority Scepter, the Black Sun's light also possessed this extraordinary power. The Black Sun's light bombardment caused the potion within the universe's dark side god's descent body to overflow. The person's expression changed, and their body suddenly retreated. The surrounding Black Sun's light also began to surge into their body. They wanted to stabilize their form and reduce the impact of the sudden loss of control. But who would give them that time? Tang's figure reappeared in the real world, with a scepter in his hand. A moment of luck exchanged the control of the War Bishop Marionette's spirit thread with the theater core. Tang and the War Bishop Marionette's positions instantly switched. The 3-meter-long Sun Authority Scepter with its dark gold luster and distorted sun symbol was aimed at the universe's dark side god's descent body, which was trying to absorb the surrounding filth and corrupting power. A yesterday reappears charm had already disappeared from his hand. At the same time, the golden hammer's light flickered, amplifying the mystical power of this Black Sun's light impact. The condensed Black Sun's light was like a true abyss, filthy, corrupt, insane, and terrifying. With another attack, the Black Sun struck the universe's dark side god's descent body again. This attack even caused the god's descent body's brain to go blank. The extraordinary characteristics of the audience pathways sequence 4, Manipulator, were planting layers of psychological suggestion, making him give up resistance and sing praises to the sun under the sunlight. His body uncontrollably moved away from the abyss's crack, and the extraordinary characteristics within his body were rapidly dissipating. I can't let this continue. He inserted his hands into the nearby wall, forcibly controlling his body from flying backward. The next moment, the scent of sulfur and the power of corruption suddenly erupted. The parchment created by the Transcendence bronze book, the uniqueness power that restricted demonic power, was suddenly greatly affected. The pollution that had been cleared was silently spreading across the parchment again, and it seemed to have grown on the parchment itself, making it impossible to remove. It was just a faint but impossible to remove abyss power, but could that little bit of contaminated parchment be considered a manifestation of demonic power? Since it was demonic power, then the death penalty should be executed immediately. The rules written in the Transcendence bronze book fell into self-contradiction. If it were to execute, it would inevitably fall into self-destruction. The power maintaining this space and suppressing the demons rapidly withered and decreased, and the suppressed abyss began to emit an even deeper and more terrifying black mist. Host, I know. The War Bishop fell from the sky at some point, smashing towards the god's descent body.
A tear appeared on the god's descent body, revealing a large patch of dark brown skin that didn't resemble a human. He began to reveal the form of a mythical creature. But the next moment, Tang held 2 more parchments in his hand. The law stipulates that the mysteries here no longer exist, and all should follow the laws of physics. The law stipulates that all legal regulations cannot affect the Transcendence bronze book, the people it authorizes, and the items they possess. The parchment shattered, and the power of reality enhancement forcibly suppressed the god's descent body's demonization power. The next moment, the war bishop suddenly disappeared, stuffed back into the warehouse by the system, replaced by countless metallic lustered liquids. The golden hammer in Tang's hand flickered again, and the next moment his figure also disappeared, entering the Euclidean space to avoid the danger that was about to come. The countless liquids within the Black Sun's domain that still emitted a magnificent color suddenly lit up. The next moment, a world-destroying explosion sounded, like a huge and magnificent mushroom cloud. The metallic hydrogen produced by the everlasting theater continuously creating miracles of creation was all used here. All fear comes from insufficient firepower. The ground cracked, the earth trembled, and even thousands of miles away, one could still feel the terrifying tremor from the earth. That was the ash that soared into the sky, the unparalleled and unquestionable miracle of the contemporary scientific side. Countless beings turned their attention here. The 2 demigods closest to the scene, one as peaceful as night and the other as violent as a storm, simultaneously locked onto the location. Chinese, it seems that the universe's dark side's plan has long been discovered, and the extraordinary being who stopped him has caused quite a stir. The middle-aged man, who looked only 30 or 40 years old but had a head of white hair and a tall, burly figure, laughed. Don't underestimate the enemy. The universe's dark side is planning to open the gate to the abyss, and we can't be careless. The old man, dressed in a black robe, as tranquil as the deep night, and possessing a sense of vicissitude, said slowly. The church has activated the zero-level sealed artifact. Before that, we must understand the situation and see what the gate to the abyss is like and whether it is open. May the storm be with us. The tall, burly man struck his left chest with his right fist. Praise the goddess. The next moment, the figures of the 2 flickered again, rushing at an extremely fast speed towards the place in the distance where explosions were still occurring continuously and the sound resounded throughout the heavens and earth. This should be able to attract the attention of the church's higher-ups. Within the Euclidean space, Tang looked at the scene of crazy explosions around him, accurately locking onto the universe's dark side god's descent body, which had not been killed in the continuous explosions. What a cockroach, he won't die even after being bombed like this. Watching the demon's body continuously disintegrate and constantly replenish itself from the abyss pollution constantly emanating from the ground, barely recovering his body while bearing the punishment of the rulebook, Tang's expression couldn't help but sink. Host. What should we do next? The system counted. Before it left, it had almost emptied the theater core's inventory. Apart from the necessary spirit worms that the theater core needed to use on marionettes, after using them for this period of time, there were only 7 yesterday reappears charms left that could be provided to the host. Tang held the Sun Authority scepter, stroking the knowledge runes engraved on it without saying a word. Polluting those flying spirits, the 2 black suns' light bombardments leading to the god's descent body's extraordinary characteristics overflowing, and the continuous explosions now destroying the god's descent body and the abyss. These could hurt the universe's dark side god's descent body, but couldn't solve the fundamental problem. Wait, Tang said. Wait for an opportunity. An opportunity for a sure kill. The explosions continued incessantly, the earth and rocks churning, obscuring the sky and sun. The pure physical nature made it difficult for the weakened demon to parry for a time. Amidst the continuous explosions and the sound of earth and rocks collapsing, the outer god's descender from the dark side of the universe had almost half of his body blown to pieces, revealing half of his brain and the red and yellow organs and fat. He lost an arm and a thigh, and was now enveloped by the thick black mist seeping from the ground. His body, after being blown apart, became abnormally large, with countless black tentacles growing from the severed parts. He looked like a grotesque amalgamation of tentacles, human flesh, and demonic essence, a monster born from nightmares. But he did not die. In fact, this allowed the power of the abyss around him to become even more solidified. The demon's power increased as the power of the Trentist brass book waned, and the restrictions of the rules in this area were gradually decreasing. Tang did not rashly take out the yesterday reappearance amulet again to grab a copy of the Book of Rules. This method had already been anticipated by the other party, and it would not have a miraculous effect if repeated. It would only restrain the other party's demonic power, which was not worthwhile. Moreover, if the first wave of metallic hydrogen explosions didn't kill him, subsequent explosions would hardly be able to blast him into dust. The first time you encounter something, it's always caught off guard and difficult to parry. High-sequence beyonders, especially devils who draw power from the dark side of the universe, have power sources that are not only the extraordinary characteristics within their bodies, but also the dark side of the universe and the abyss. Once they adapt to this situation, pure physical explosions can no longer cause them much damage, at most making them look a little embarrassed. Tang sighed and stood up. Twisting his wrist, the figure of the Sun Authority scepter appeared in Tang's hand again. Praise the sun, Tang smiled. I'll let you sing enough later, can you shut up for me now? Or go and have a good time with the system. He really didn't want to hear the Sun Authority scepter singing at this moment, it would make him very irritable. Hee. Even the system's mechanical voice seemed, well, never mind, otherwise his system would cry and make a fuss again. The Sun Authority scepter silently muted itself. Feeling wrong JPG. The explosions continued, and the Euclidean space was equally noisy, yet there was a strange tranquility. It was like watching a television series that was none of your business. Any changes in the real world could not disturb this space in a higher dimension. As long as you used this ability well, you could flicker in and out of existence during battles with high-sequence beings. Coupled with the secret puppet, it was enough for Tang to avoid most of the enemy's attacks. To be honest, Tang, as an outsider, had done enough. He had delayed the time and injured the Outer God's descender. At this time, he could just go back and pull Owen away. Even if the pollution broke out, it would only be the Orthodox Church that would have a headache. Judging from the commotion caused, the Church's high-sequence beyonders, perhaps with a zero-level sealed artifact, were probably already on their way. Even if the dark side of the universe really opened the gates of the abyss, there would be divine descents from the gods, and the Outer God's descender would not be able to complete his mission at all. With this battle, his potion, centered on himself, the War Bishop secret puppet, the Sun Authority scepter, and the Descender, with the hidden dark side of the universe as the audience, provided him with enough spiritual feedback. Moreover, his ritual conditions were met when the demigod of the farmer pathway was contaminated and killed by the sunlight. Although both the potion digestion and the ritual effects were still a bit unsatisfactory, if he gritted his teeth, he might be able to try to advance to sequence 4 now. The audience level was high enough, and the drama he directed was grand enough. Even the incidental killing of the demigod had already met most of the ritual's requirements, at most leading to poor ritual effects, increased risks, and more severe personality splits. However, speaking of the audience, Tang glanced strangely at the distant reaches of the Euclidean space. He always felt that something dirty had been watching him since the battle started. But it didn't show in the Euclidean space. Time was tight, and Tang didn't bother with the problem any further. While the aftermath of the explosion was still subsiding, he began to investigate the traces of the Abyss Gate. Seeing the valley that had been razed to the ground, the extremely deep underground, and a crack that was constantly expanding, Tang's heart sank even further. The church's high-level officials haven't arrived yet? Really, too slow. There was no way, he had to delay the time for the Abyss Gate to open. If the things inside ran out, the entire Orkney Highlands would probably suffer a wave of pollution. How many thousands of people would die then? Advancing to sequence 4 now would cause unspeakable shock to my spirit. An unstable mental state would definitely be exploited by the Outer God's descender. Moreover, the big explosion did not destroy the Abyss Gate. The Abyss Gate is an abstract concept in mysticism. It does not exist as a physical entity. Even destroying the entire Orkney Highlands would not prevent the opening of the Abyss Gate. The only way to stop it, at present, seems to be to stop the Outer Gods Descenders ritual. Taking advantage of the aftermath of the explosion beginning to subside, Tang found a safe place to come out of the Euclidean space. A moment of luck, and the Theater Corps exchanged control of the War Bishop's spirit thread again. The hunter in ancient silver armor, wielding the Sun Authority scepter, suddenly charged towards the Outer Gods Descender again amidst the explosions. The reason for exchanging the secret puppet's control was, firstly, the extraordinary power of the War Bishop sequence. As a high sequence meander of the Calamity and two pathways, only the War Bishop can truly bring out the advantages of an army. And what serves as the army is the countless secret puppets in the never-ending theater. Even if they are not here, they will become members of the Legion. The Sun Authority scepter in the hands of the War Bishop was like a sharp weapon for killing. Without the black sunlight, the Sun Authority scepter itself was an indestructible weapon. The Outer Gods Descender, whose body had already collapsed into a monster, struggled to hold on under the War Bishop's attacks. The War Bishop was already sparing no effort. His figure was even more elusive, his power was strengthened, and his destructive power was even more astonishing. Compared to the previous pure physical strength and demonic confrontation, it was even more wild. Every swing of the Sun Authority scepter would leave a bottomless crack in the ground. At the same time, there was the deterrence of the mental analyst, the record of the recorder, the spider silk of the witch, and the dazzling sunlight of the light priest. Various middle and low sequence extraordinary powers that were suitable for this scene erupted. War Bishop, one man becomes a legion, meticulous attack thinking, uninterrupted coverage strikes, every weakness of the enemy. Every response method was like a meticulous calculator, without any errors, as if born for battle, for war, and existing as a monster. This was not a secret puppet state that a secret puppet master could control. It wasn't so much that he was facing a faceless, but rather that he was truly facing a seasoned Sequence 3, an existence close to an Earth Angel. And the strength of a high sequence meander of Sequence 3 was now beginning to manifest. But the God Descender was already in a wretched state, yet the smile on his face grew even wider, almost splitting his mouth. "Do you think that this level of combat can affect me?" His words, every single one, were filthy and depraved. However, the Faceless had no emotions. Even with the bionic Faceless module installed, Tang had not set any emotions when facing the Abyss. He had also used advanced death domain incantations to kill any emotional content in the module beforehand. No emotional fluctuations were possible. But this depravity was not aimed at the Faceless in front of him. The earth was still trembling. The explosions had gradually subsided, but the earth's tremors continued incessantly. The black sunlight around them had thinned, and the black sun in the sky was slowly moving away, revealing the dazzling sunlight behind it. After praying to the theater for a miracle and projecting the daytime scene of this area from the historical fog and gaps, this place had turned into daytime. Now, this historical projection of the scene was falling apart. The sun was illusory and dim, and the enormous crimson moon was gradually appearing. The earth's tremors did not stop for a moment. Even the terrifying power of dust and explosions reaching the sky had not filled the cracks in the ground, and they were still expanding. It was like a person's eyes, slowly opening. Tang stood far away, his eyes turning deep, communicating with the core of the theater through the Master of Ceremonies' reign. As for the second reason for exchanging control of the War Bishop's spirit body. In the next moment, the War Bishop cleaved the other half of the God Descender's already monstrous body. Before the Outer God Descender could react, the figure of the War Bishop in front of him disappeared, replaced by a new Faceless. And, above the shattered sun, floated a crystal-clear core, constantly pulsating like a heart. That was the never-ending theater, that was the theater core. Through spirit worms, through the infinitely extended spirit bodyline of the bionic Faceless module, the War Bishop and the never-ending theater had exchanged positions. Miracle, miracle, miracle of life, miracle of creation. A mad roar resounded. The sun, which was gradually dissipating in the sky, could no longer conceal the crimson moon behind it. But at this moment, a huge dome unfolded overhead, and piece after piece of black curtain fell continuously. A huge, magnificent, mysterious, and terrifying theater was being rapidly built. Mysterious and hidden power, accompanied by insane knowledge, was isolating this place from other areas, creating a cage that was impossible to escape, wanting to trap the outer god descender inside. Sequence 2, Miracle Invoker. This was a true, zero-grade sealed artifact. This was true angel-level combat power. The outer god descender's pupils dilated slightly. This was the first time he had other emotions. It's you. It was you who took this sealed artifact. It was you who disrupted my arrangement. His roar did not go out. The moment the theater took shape, he was locked into the Scarlet Scholar District. On the huge but dilapidated sports field, am I beautiful? 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 It was a young woman with disheveled hair, wearing a red coat and a mask. Am I beautiful like this? She took off her mask in front of the outer god descender, revealing the same torn mouth as the outer god now. Even like this, am I beautiful? She didn't know when a large pair of scissors had appeared in her hand. In front of the outer god descender, she suddenly rushed towards him, laughing wildly. I want you to become as beautiful as me, ha 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 ha. In the next moment, her body turned into blood, killed by the other party. But this was not the end. The Scarlet Scholar District was filled with countless monsters and mental pollution, a real and substantial fear and strangeness that could drive people mad and out of control. The cleft-faced woman, contaminated by the black sunlight, brought a thick mental pollution that quietly climbed onto the split outer god descender. His body became heavy. This was not a problem for the outer god who held the depravity authority, but twist and turn, twist and turn, twist and turn. Mommy, take good care of my red wedding dress, don't let me die too early, too early. Giggles, crawling sounds, creaking of wood, suona horns, chainsaws, terrifying and intense mental pollution was everywhere. Thin, long shadows appeared on the walls. Someone was flying around in the sky carrying a human head lantern. The concrete mannequin in the corner quietly turned its head. Each of them carried intense black sunlight mental pollution, each of them twisted and strange. This was mental madness. This was the never-ending theater, tearing away all appearances, revealing the deepest darkness. The people in the outer and inner scholar districts were not aware that the never-ending theater had moved. Olzon and the Abraham group were still doing their own things, without noticing anything wrong. However, at the very bottom of the entire school, in the Scarlet Scholar District, the pollution irrigated like a flood, crashing towards the outer god descender. That was pollution, that was the ultimate pollution that would completely drag the other party's mind into madness. The countless curtains of the never-ending theater isolated the god descender from the abyss, preventing him from borrowing power from the abyss, and also preventing him from digesting so much mental pollution, so much depraved power. But even if he was in danger, even if the Beyonder characteristics on his body were already out of control, even if he was about to go completely mad, he also, before the pollution could pounce, his body swelled up. The theater core realized that something was wrong, but it was too late. The abyss's pollution overflowed from every cell, every piece of flesh, every drop of blood, frantically devouring the surrounding mental pollution. He was forcibly reverse polluting this pollution, assimilating it. The outer god abandoned this demon's body. He was about to open the door to the abyss. The pollution corroded the curtains. Through the curtains, a drop of black blood dripped onto the bottom of the pit outside, which had already been bombed into slag. Tang's expression became solemn. The shaking of the earth did not stop. In the next moment, the crack suddenly widened. That was, as if leading to the abyss, a bottomless crack. The whistling wind blew from under the crack, and the filthy, depraved power surged upwards. The door was opened. For more thrilling fanfiction stories like this, check out my channel Fanfic Audiobook. Dive into epic adventures, mysterious realms, and legendary journeys brought to life through immersive storytelling. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more amazing audiobooks.